Have you ever had one of those days where it feels like the entire world is shouting at you? Your phone buzzes with another critical comment. Your inbox is a chaotic mess of demands, and someone, somewhere, is trying to micromanage your every move. It's a constant barrage, an exhausting siege on your peace of mind. In these moments, we can feel so fragile, as if our happiness is a delicate vase that the slightest jolt from the outside world can shatter. We look for peace by trying to control everything and everyone around us, only to find ourselves more exhausted, more anxious, and more fragile than when we started. But what if the problem isn't the noise itself? What if the problem is that we've been building our shelters in all the wrong places? Nearly 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor named Marcus Aurelius faced pressures that would make our modern anxieties seem trivial: threats of war, political betrayal, immense responsibility. And yet, in his private writings, he penned these timeless words: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That is the profound, life-altering shift we are going to explore together. This video is your guide to building a mind that is truly immune to the sting of criticism, the disorientation of daily chaos, and the exhausting desire to control the uncontrollable. We are not talking about building a thick skin or simply toughing it out. We are talking about cultivating an inner fortress, a citadel of calm and clarity that stands unshaken no matter what storms rage outside its walls. This is the core promise of Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that is startlingly practical for our modern lives. It offers not just theories to ponder, but a set of mental frameworks and daily practices that can rewire your relationship with the world. The enemies of our peace are clear: the harsh words of others, the unpredictable turbulence of daily life, and our own frantic attempts to force reality to match our desires. Stoicism provides the shields and the strategies to meet each of these challenges, not with brittle resistance, but with resilient understanding. Our journey will take us through the essential tools you need. We will learn how to distinguish between what is truly within our command and what is not, a fundamental skill that immediately returns a tremendous amount of energy back to you. We will practice the art of seeing obstacles not as roadblocks, but as the very raw material for building our character. We will explore how to strip away the dramatic stories we tell ourselves about events and see things with calm, objective clarity. This isn't about becoming emotionless or detached from the world. It is about becoming free from the tyranny of other people's opinions, free from the anxiety of uncertainty, and free from the exhausting illusion that we can command the tides of fate. By the end of our time together, you will have a practical blueprint for cultivating a resilience that comes from within, a strength that cannot be taken from you because it is built on the one thing you truly own: your own mind. Let's begin. The first and most vital step is understanding what is truly yours to command. This is the cornerstone of Stoic wisdom, a principle so fundamental that the philosopher Epictetus placed it right at the very beginning of his handbook, the Enchiridion. He wrote that some things are within our power while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, in short, everything that is essentially our own doing. Everything else, he said, is not within our power: our body, our property, our reputation, our public office, and crucially, the actions and opinions of other people. Understanding this distinction is not just an interesting philosophical idea. It is the bedrock of building a mind immune to chaos. It is the act of drawing a bright, clear line around the territory of your soul, declaring that everything inside that line is your responsibility and your domain, and everything outside of it is not. This is profoundly liberating because it redirects your finite energy away from the futile and exhausting task of trying to control the uncontrollable and channels it entirely into the one area where you have absolute sovereignty, your own inner world. Think of your mental energy as a precious resource like water. If you try to water every single field for miles around, you will quickly run dry and your own garden will wither. But if you focus that water carefully and consistently on the small plot of land that is truly yours, it will flourish, becoming a source of strength and sustenance, no matter what the weather is like outside the fence. Most of our anxiety and frustration comes from trying to command the weather. We exhaust ourselves trying to change someone's opinion of us. We rage against a traffic jam that has no concern for our schedule, and we tie our happiness to the outcome of events that are, in the grand scheme, entirely outside our hands. The dichotomy of control is the ultimate filter. It asks one simple question of every single thing that bothers you: is this within my control? If the answer is no, then the Stoic response is not despair, but a conscious release. You save your energy, you turn your attention inward. Let's make this practical with a very common modern scenario. You spend weeks on a project at work, you present it with pride, and your manager sends back an email with harsh, seemingly unfair criticism. Your initial reaction is a hot flush of anger, maybe shame, a defensive urge to fire back a reply. This is the moment to apply the filter. What here is within your control? You did not control your manager's mood, their biases, or the words they chose to write. That email once sent is an external event. It is a fact, like a rock in your path. What you absolutely do control is your judgment about that rock. Is it a catastrophic personal failure, or is it simply feedback, some of it useful, some of it not, that you can assess calmly? You control your impulse to react defensively. You control the time you take to pause and breathe before responding. You control the words you choose in your reply. You control whether you let this event ruin your entire day or whether you learn from it and move forward. The event itself is neutral. The power lies in your interpretation. By focusing your effort on your response rather than on the event you cannot change, you transform a potential emotional disaster into an exercise in character. This realization is the foundational shield. It doesn't make the criticism disappear, but it stops the arrow before it can pierce your peace of mind. The chaos of the outside world loses its power to disturb you because you are no longer trying to stop the chaos. You are simply ensuring that your inner citadel is secure. So I want you to try this right now. Think back over the last week. Can you list 3 things that caused you stress or frustration that were ultimately outside your complete control? Perhaps it was the mood of a loved one, a delay caused by someone else's mistake, or the outcome of a decision you weren't part of. Now, consider how you reacted. Did you spend energy fighting the unfightable? Simply by doing this exercise, you begin the essential work of retraining your mind to focus on its true domain, building that first, crucial layer of immunity. Imagine your mind as a fortified castle, impervious to the sieges of the outside world. This is the powerful metaphor that Marcus Aurelius used, calling it the inner citadel. It's not a physical place, of course, but a profound psychological reality, a protected space within your own consciousness where your true self resides, a sanctuary of reason and calm that no external event can ever breach without your permission. This concept is the natural evolution of the dichotomy of control. Once you understand what is truly yours, the next step is to actively build and fortify that space. The inner citadel isn't about withdrawing from life or becoming emotionally numb. It's about creating an unshakable center of gravity within yourself so that you can engage with the world fully, passionately, but without being thrown off balance by every shift in fortune. You learn to live in the bustling city of life, but you always have a quiet, secure home to return to inside your own mind. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire at its most powerful, constantly practiced retreating into this citadel. In his private journal, known to us as Meditations, he writes, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills, but this is altogether unphilosophical, when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. Nowhere can a person find a retreat more full of peace or more free from care than his own soul." He is reminding himself that even amidst the incredible pressures of leading armies and managing a vast empire, his ultimate place of peace was not a distant villa. It was immediately accessible, right behind his own eyes. This retreat is an active practice of recollection. It's the moment you consciously step back from the chaotic narrative of a situation and reconnect with your core principles. When criticism arrives, instead of being swept away by the initial wave of emotion, you retreat into your citadel. You close the gates to the shouting mob of reactive feelings and consult your inner council of wisdom. What is true here? What is false? How shall I respond with virtue? Consider the stark contrast between two people facing the same crisis. One person has a weak, crumbling inner citadel. Their sense of self is built on shifting sands: their job title, their social standing, the approval of others. When a professional setback hits, it's not just a problem to be solved. It feels like a direct attack on their entire identity. They become emotionally volatile, lashing out in anger or collapsing into despair. Their peace is entirely dependent on circumstances going their way. Now picture another person with a well-fortified inner citadel. They face an identical setback. The initial shock might be the same, but they have a place to go. They retreat inside, reminding themselves of their core values: resilience, integrity, and the understanding that their worth is not determined by a single outcome. From this place of calm judgment, they assess the situation clearly. They see the problem not as a world-ending catastrophe, but as a challenge to be met. Their composure isn't coldness, it's immense strength. It's the strength that comes from knowing that no matter what happens outside the walls, the commander inside remains calm and in control. The walls of your inner citadel are not made of stone, but of your chosen values and practiced judgments. What are the principles that guard your peace? Perhaps it's the unwavering commitment to act with integrity, even when no one is watching. Maybe it's the deep-seated belief that your character is more important than your comfort. It could be the value you place on rationality over reactivity. Every time you consciously choose a virtuous response over a primal reaction, you are adding another stone to your fortress. The Stoics believed that this citadel becomes stronger through use. Every minor irritation you meet with patience strengthens the gates. Every piece of unfair criticism you meet with calm analysis reinforces the walls. Soon, the daily chaos that once felt overwhelming becomes mere background noise, unable to disturb the quiet order within. So, let's make this real for a moment. I want you to close your eyes just for a few seconds in your mind and visualize this inner citadel. What does it look like? Is it a massive stone castle on a cliff, enduring the crashing waves below? Is it a serene, sunlit temple in a quiet forest? There is no right or wrong image. The key is to give this abstract idea a form in your imagination. Now ask yourself, what protects it? What are the values that form its unbreachable walls? Is it your courage, your wisdom, your sense of justice? And who is the guardian at the gate? That's your faculty of judgment, the part of you that decides what impressions to let in and which to question before granting them entry. This simple act of visualization is more than a daydream. It's a powerful exercise in neuroplasticity. It helps your brain solidify the concept, making it easier to access in moments of real-world pressure. The more vividly you can picture your retreat, the more readily you will find your way there when the sieges of life begin. What if fearing chaos actually makes it more powerful? This might sound counterintuitive, but the Stoics discovered a profound truth. Our attempts to avoid thinking about potential hardships often leave us more vulnerable to them. When we push negative possibilities out of our minds, we grant them a mysterious power over us. They become shadowy monsters lurking in the closet of our imagination, growing larger and more terrifying precisely because we refuse to look at them. The Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils, is the act of courageously opening that closet door and turning on the light. It is the disciplined exercise of mentally rehearsing potential setbacks, not as an act of pessimistic worry, but as a tool of supreme preparedness. This is not about expecting the worst to happen. It is about removing the worst from its pedestal of fear by making it familiar. By visualizing adversity in advance, you are effectively vaccinating your mind against it. You are building antibodies of resilience so that when, or if, a challenge actually arrives, your system already recognizes it and knows how to respond without going into a state of panic. The Roman philosopher Seneca was a master of this practice. In his letters to his friend Lucilius, he repeatedly advised him to periodically contemplate the loss of the things he held dear: his wealth, his status, even his loved ones. He wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Seneca's goal was not to make Lucilius miserable in the present moment. Quite the opposite. By mentally rehearsing the loss of his possessions, Seneca argued, Lucilius would come to appreciate them more deeply while they were still his, and he would simultaneously build a fortress of equanimity that would protect him if they were ever taken away. This practice accomplishes two crucial things at once. First, it inoculates you against the shock and disorientation of misfortune. The blow is lessened because you have already felt its sting in the safe space of your mind. Second, and perhaps more beautifully, it generates a profound sense of gratitude for the present. When you consciously imagine your life without your health, your job, or your family, you return to your current reality with a renewed sense of its preciousness. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Your morning coffee tastes richer, the sound of a loved one's laughter becomes a gift, and the simple fact of a peaceful day feels like a victory. Think of a professional athlete standing on the free throw line with seconds left on the clock. The crowd is roaring, the pressure is immense. A novice player might try to blank out all thoughts of missing, desperately hoping to make the shot. But an elite athlete often does the opposite. They have already visualized this moment 1,000 times in practice. They have specifically rehearsed the sensation of the ball slipping from their fingers imperfectly, the sound of it clanging off the rim. They have played out the scenario of missing and then calmly preparing for the next play. By doing this, they strip the moment of its terrifying power. The possibility of failure is no longer a monster. It is just one possible outcome among others, an outcome they are prepared to handle with poise. The same principle applies directly to our fear of criticism. Imagine you are about to launch a creative project, a new business, a piece of art, a public presentation. The fear of negative feedback can be paralyzing. Now apply premeditatio malorum. Sit down and deliberately imagine the worst-case scenario. Picture a scathing review, a trolling comment, a lukewarm reception. But then, and this is the crucial next step, visualize your own Stoic response. See yourself reading the criticism, feeling the initial sting, and then retreating to your inner citadel. Watch yourself assess it calmly, extract any useful nuggets of truth, and dismiss the rest with the understanding that it is an external event outside your control. By mentally walking this path, you are building a neural roadmap for calmness. When the real criticism comes, your mind has already been there. It knows the way forward. This practice transforms anxiety into action. Worry is the chaotic, unfocused energy of a mind trying to solve a problem that hasn't happened yet. Premeditatio malorum channels that same energy into a structured, purposeful rehearsal. It moves you from a passive victim of your imagination to an active architect of your resilience. The chaos of the outside world loses its ability to shock you because you have already welcomed it as a guest in your mind, studied its features, and decided how you will behave in its presence. So let's put this into practice right now. I want you to take the next 2 minutes. You can even pause this video and bring to mind a specific worry that has been lingering in the back of your thoughts. It could be a concern about your finances, a difficult conversation you need to have, or a project at work that feels precarious. Now, instead of pushing it away, lean into it. Imagine the worst-case outcome unfolding in vivid detail, but then shift your focus. How would your stoic self respond? What would the first calm, rational action be? How would you apply the dichotomy of control in that situation? By giving this worry a defined shape and a planned response, you are not inviting disaster, you are disarming it. You are taking back the power that fear has held over you and placing it firmly back in the one place it truly belongs, within your own reasoned judgment. The Stoic doesn't merely endure chaos, they embrace it as necessary. This is the profound leap from resilience to a kind of spiritual alchemy, a principle that the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche would later call amor fati, a love of one's fate. While the term comes from Nietzsche, the spirit is pure Stoicism. It is the decision to not just accept the unexpected twists and turns of life with grim determination, but to welcome them, to see them as essential threads in the tapestry of your existence. This mindset is the ultimate weapon against the disorientation of chaos because it fundamentally redefines the event itself. An obstacle is no longer something that blocks your path, it becomes the path. It is the very material you are meant to work with to build your character. When you practice amor fati, you remove the sting from the unforeseen by declaring that nothing that happens is truly foreign to you. It all belongs: the rain that cancels your picnic, the criticism that forces you to reconsider, the failure that teaches you humility. These are not mistakes in the universe's plan. They are the plan. This radical acceptance is deeply woven into the writings of Marcus Aurelius. He constantly reminded himself to seek out the benefit hidden within every occurrence, to see the hand of a rational universe even in events that seemed harsh or random. He wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." This is the essence of amor fati. The Stoic mind is that fire. It does not complain about the quality of the fuel, the wet wood, the imperfect logs. It uses everything it is given to burn brighter. A setback is fuel for patience. A betrayal is fuel for understanding. A loss is fuel for gratitude. By loving your fate, you are not passively resigning yourself to a negative situation. You are actively choosing to find the value within it, thereby transforming its power over you from destructive to constructive. Consider a historical moment that embodies this principle. Imagine a military commander who suffers a devastating, unexpected defeat. His plans are in ruins, his forces are demoralized, and the campaign seems lost. One leader might rage against his misfortune, blame his officers, and collapse into despair, but a leader with amor fati would do something different. He would accept the defeat as a fact, a new piece of reality. He would then ask, what does this make possible? Perhaps the defeat reveals a critical weakness in his strategy that he can now correct. Maybe it forces him to retreat to more defensible terrain. inadvertently saving his army from a much larger enemy force he didn't know was coming. The defeat, in this light, becomes a painful but necessary lesson, a strategic gift in a brutal disguise. This is not just positive thinking, it is a pragmatic reassessment of the landscape. The event itself hasn't changed, but the leader's relationship to it has been completely transformed, opening up avenues for action that were invisible when he was focused on resistance. You can find modern parallels for this in your own life, often in surprisingly simple ways. Think about a time when a long-awaited plan was suddenly cancelled. Your initial reaction might be frustration and disappointment, but then, forced to stay home, you discover a quiet afternoon you hadn't expected. That empty space allows you to finally read a book that has been sitting on your shelf for months, or it leads to an unexpected, meaningful conversation with a family member that wouldn't have happened if you had been out. The cancelled plan, which initially felt like a loss, becomes a hidden gift. Amor fati is the habit of looking for that gift deliberately. It is the practice of trusting that the universe might be offering you something you didn't know you needed, even if it arrives in the unwelcome packaging of disruption or difficulty. This shift requires a deep trust in the process of life itself. It is the belief that you are not a fragile leaf being tossed by a cruel wind, but an active participant in a story that is larger than your immediate comfort. The chaos is not an enemy to be defeated, it is a teacher, and often a rigorous one. When you stop fighting what is and start working with it, you tap into a tremendous source of energy. The effort you once wasted on resisting reality is now freed up for creative engagement. This is how you build a mind that is not just immune to chaos, but one that thrives on it, because it sees in every disruption a new opportunity to practice virtue, to learn, and to grow. So let's bring this directly into your life right now. I want you to think of one recent inconvenience, a small piece of chaos that irritated you this week. Perhaps it was a flat tire, a last-minute work deadline, a rude comment from a stranger, or an appliance breaking down. Now I challenge you to reframe it. Actively look for the hidden gift or the lesson it contained. Did the flat tire force you to slow down and take a breath you desperately needed? Did the unfair criticism highlight a blind spot you can now address? Did the broken appliance teach you a lesson in patience or self-reliance? The goal isn't to pretend the event was pleasant, but to find the value that is invariably woven into the difficulty. This simple act of reframing is a practical exercise in amor fati. It is how you begin to train your mind to not just withstand the storms of life, but to learn the unique dance required by each one. Strip the story away, see the event, not the drama. This is the heart of the Stoic discipline of ascent, the moment between something happening and our reaction to it where true freedom lies. Most of our suffering is not born from the events of our lives, but from the elaborate, often catastrophic, narratives we instantly build on top of them. We don't just experience a critical comment, we experience it as a devastating personal attack. A missed deadline isn't simply a schedule adjustment, it's a career-ending disaster. We layer our interpretations, our fears, and our insecurities onto a neutral reality, and then we suffer under the weight of the story we ourselves have created. The Stoics identified this as the primary source of our emotional turmoil. The world presents us with raw facts, but we are the ones who color them with judgment, and it is the color, not the fact itself, that determines our peace or our pain. The philosopher Epictetus put it with unforgettable clarity when he said, "It's not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them." Think about the power in that simple statement. An event is just an event. It is a collection of facts. Your opinion, your judgment, is the lens through which you view it. If the lens is cracked or distorted by fear and ego, the entire picture will be warped. The practice of objective judgment is the act of cleaning that lens, of striving to see the thing itself in its pure, unadorned state before we decide what it means. This is not about becoming cold or unfeeling. It is about becoming clear-sighted. It's the difference between a doctor diagnosing an illness based on symptoms and a patient panicking about what the illness might mean. The doctor's objective assessment is what leads to an effective cure. Our panic only makes the suffering worse. Let's take a common, everyday example that almost everyone can relate to: a traffic jam. You're running late for an important meeting and you hit a wall of brake lights. Now, observe the two different ways your mind can frame this exact same situation. The first way is to layer on the drama. You think, this is a nightmare, this always happens to me, my boss is going to be furious, this completely ruins my entire day. I'm so unlucky. Notice the labels: nightmare, ruins my day. Notice the sweeping generalizations: always happens to me. This narrative creates a physical response. Your heart rate increases, your grip tightens on the steering wheel, you feel a surge of anger and anxiety. Now try the Stoic approach. Strip the story away. What are the bare facts? Fact: I am in my car. Fact: the cars in front of me are moving very slowly. Fact: this will likely cause a delay of approximately 20 minutes. Fact: I will be late for my meeting. That's it. Those are the objective circumstances. The delay is inconvenient, yes, but it is not a nightmare. It is a 20-minute delay. By describing it in purely factual terms, you drain it of its emotional charge. The stress dissipates because you are no longer fighting a monster of your own creation. You are simply dealing with a situation. This practice becomes incredibly powerful when applied to criticism, which is often the most potent poison for our peace of mind. Someone sends you a message saying your presentation was confusing and missed the key points. The initial, unexamined impression might be a wave of shame and defensiveness. The story you tell yourself might be, they think I'm incompetent, I've embarrassed myself. My reputation is damaged. But now apply objective judgment. Strip the story away. What are the facts? Fact: a person communicated a set of words to me. Fact: the words stated that the presentation was confusing and missed key points. That is all that has objectively occurred. The rest, the intention behind the words, the judgment of your character, the long-term consequences, is a story you are adding. From this place of calm objectivity, you can now choose a useful response. You can assess the feedback for any actionable truth. Was a particular section unclear? That is valuable information for next time. Or you might determine that the criticism is unfounded and reflects more on the critic than on you. Either way, your response comes from a place of reasoned choice, not from a reactive emotional storm. You have diffused the bomb by refusing to acknowledge it as a bomb in the first place. This discipline requires constant vigilance because our minds are storytelling machines by nature. We are wired to interpret, to find patterns, to assign meaning. The Stoic practice is not to shut down this ability, but to master it. It is to become the editor of your own internal news channel, questioning the headlines before you let them dictate your emotional state. Is this fact or is this commentary? Is this what happened or is this what I fear it means? This moment of pause, this space between the event and your assent to a judgment about it, is the birthplace of your immunity. It is where you reclaim authorship of your experience. So, let's make this a tangible exercise. I want you to think back to a recent piece of criticism you received, whether at work, online, or in a personal relationship. It doesn't have to be a major event. Even a small, offhand comment will work. Now, in your mind, or even better, on a piece of paper, I want you to describe that event using only purely factual, emotionless terms. Write it as if you were a neutral observer, a camera recording events without any internal commentary. Instead of writing, "My colleague was incredibly rude and insulted my work," you would write, "My colleague said, this report is not up to standard." Instead of writing, "I was devastated by that negative comment," you would write, "A user posted the words, this video was boring." Feel the difference. The factual description is clean, sharp, and manageable. The dramatic story is heavy, blurry, and overwhelming. By practicing this simple act of objective description, you are training your mind to see the world as it is, not as your fears and insecurities paint it to be. You are building the habit of pausing before you layer on the drama, and in that pause, you will find a profound and lasting sense of control. Picture yourself rising above the city, then the planet, seeing your life as a tiny part of a vast whole. This is the essence of the Stoic practice known as the view from above, a powerful mental exercise that Marcus Aurelius returned to again and again in his private meditations as a way to regain tranquility. He would write passages urging himself to constantly remember how all things are borne upward and interchanged and twirled together, encouraging a perspective that saw human affairs from a great height, like looking down from a mountaintop upon the tiny ant-like bustle below. This is not about diminishing your life's importance, but about contextualizing it. It is about recognizing that the stressful conflict you are embroiled in, the harsh criticism that feels so personal, the chaotic event that seems to upend your world, all of it exists within a frame so immense that its power to disturb you begins to evaporate. When you zoom out to a cosmic scale, the volume on your personal dramas gets turned down to a whisper. The goal of this practice is to achieve a profound shift in perception. Our minds have a natural tendency to magnify our immediate problems, filling our entire field of vision until a single negative email or a disagreement with a colleague feels like the only thing that matters. This is an evolutionary survival mechanism, but in the modern world, it often causes us immense unnecessary suffering. The view from above is the conscious antidote. It manually overrides that myopic focus and forces a wider angle. Suddenly, you are not just an employee in a stressful meeting. You are a human being on a spinning rock hurtling through an incomprehensibly vast universe. The meeting room is a tiny speck on the surface of that rock. The words spoken in that room are vibrations in the air, lasting only for a moment. From this vantage point, the urgency and intensity of the problem naturally diminish. It's not that the problem isn't real or doesn't require a solution. It's that its emotional weight is recalibrated to its true proportion. This creates a space for calm, rational action where there was only panicked reaction before. To make this tangible, let's apply it to a scenario almost everyone faces: a stressful work conflict. Imagine you've had a heated disagreement with a co-worker over a project. The tension is thick, you feel disrespected, and you're cycling through angry thoughts about what to say next. Now, activate the view from above. First, pull your perspective back to 5 years from now. Will you even remember the specifics of this argument? Will it have had any meaningful impact on the trajectory of your life? For the vast majority of such conflicts, the answer is no. Next, pull back further. See your office building from a bird's eye view, then as one building among thousands in your city. See the countless other people living their lives, each with their own struggles, joys, and worries just as vivid to them as yours are to you. Your conflict is one small story among billions unfolding simultaneously. Finally, take the cosmic view. See the Earth as a pale blue dot in the blackness of space. From here, national borders vanish and all of human history is a brief flash. The project deadline, the harsh words, the personal slight, they lose their solidity. They are temporary patterns in an ancient, endless flow. This perspective is not meant to make you feel insignificant, but to grant you a liberating sense of lightness. The stakes feel high because we are looking at them from an inch away. The view from above gives us the gift of distance. Marcus Aurelius used this to remind himself that the praise and blame of others are equally fleeting. He wrote how quickly all things disappear, in the universe the bodies themselves, but in time the remembrance of them. The critic whose words sting you today will be forgotten in a century. The project you are stressing over will be completed and archived. This isn't nihilism, it's a profound source of peace. It allows you to engage with your duties fully and virtuously, but without the crushing anxiety that comes from believing that every single outcome is of eternal importance. You can do your best, act with integrity, and then release your grip on the result, trusting that it will be absorbed into the vast, indifferent, and beautiful machinery of the cosmos. The true power of this technique lies in its ability to shrink the sources of our anxiety down to their actual size. A worry that feels like a boulder in your path, when viewed from this elevated standpoint, is revealed to be a mere pebble. This doesn't mean you ignore the pebble. You simply don't exhaust yourself trying to push it as if it were a boulder. You deal with it appropriately, with the energy it truly deserves, conserving your strength for the challenges that are genuinely monumental. The practice builds a resilient mind because it trains you to habitually seek a larger context. When chaos erupts, your first instinct becomes to rise above it mentally, to get your bearings, and to see the situation for what it is. A small event in a long life, on an ancient planet, in a galaxy among countless galaxies. So, the next time you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, that sense of being overwhelmed by a problem or paralyzed by criticism, I want you to practice this visualization. It doesn't require closing your eyes. You can do it in an instant. Just pause, take a breath, and consciously pull your awareness upward. See the room you're in from the ceiling, then from the sky. Imagine the curve of the earth and then the silent, star-dusted expanse of space. Hold that image for just a few seconds. Let the vast quiet of the cosmos settle over your noisy problem. When you return to ground level, you will bring a fragment of that cosmic tranquility back with you. The problem will likely still be there, but you will be different. You will be calmer, clearer, and armed with the unshakable knowledge that this, too, is just a small part of a much, much larger story. Your integrity is your compass, not the applause of the crowd. This principle is the very heart of the Stoic discipline of action, a profound shift in motivation that severs the link between your self-worth and the unpredictable opinions of others. Up to this point, we've built shields and fortresses. Now we learn how to move through the world from that place of inner strength. The discipline is this: to act because the action is right, virtuous, and aligned with your character, and to let the outcome, whether it brings praise, blame, or utter silence, be what it may. When your primary goal is to receive external validation, you hand over the keys to your emotional state to a fickle and often unjust world. You become a puppet, your strings pulled by every compliment and cut by every criticism. But when you act for the sake of the action itself, for the integrity of the effort, you become the puppeteer. Your peace is no longer contingent on a result you cannot fully control. This is how you build a mind that is truly immune, because its source of fulfillment is internal and self-replenishing. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured this idea beautifully when he wrote about the nature of a good life. He argued that the truly good person is content with their own conscience, finding their reward in the act of virtuous living itself. He suggested that we should undertake our duties with the same focus and dedication as a soldier following orders, not for the medal he might receive, but because it is his duty to do so. The medal is a possible external consequence. The honor is in the doing. This internalizes your scorecard. Instead of anxiously waiting for the world to give you a grade, you become your own most rigorous and fair judge. You know when you have acted with courage, with justice, with wisdom, and with moderation. That knowledge, that quiet self-respect, is a reward that no one can take from you. It is a peace that is far more durable and satisfying than the fleeting thrill of public acclaim, which can vanish in an instant with the next trend or the next critic's sharp word. Consider the powerful contrast between two artists. The first artist creates solely for the market. They study the algorithms, chase the latest styles, and tailor their work to what they believe will generate the most likes, shares, and sales. Their creative process is a constant negotiation with an invisible audience. Every brushstroke is weighed against its potential for approval. When praise comes, they feel a temporary high, but it is always followed by the anxiety of having to replicate that success. When criticism arrives, or worse, indifference, it feels like a personal indictment, a confirmation of their deepest insecurities. Their artistic life is a roller coaster, entirely dependent on forces outside their studio walls. Now picture the second artist. This artist creates from an inner necessity, from a deep, authentic place. They are driven by a love for the craft, a commitment to their unique vision, and the personal standard of excellence they have set for themselves. They put their work into the world, of course, and they may hope it resonates with others, but that resonance is not the fuel for their fire. The act of creation itself is the reward. Praise is welcome but non-essential. Criticism is considered for any useful feedback, but it does not shatter their sense of purpose. This artist possesses a profound immunity because their validation comes from within. They are free. This discipline extends far beyond the arts into every corner of our lives. Think about a manager leading a team. The manager who acts for praise might avoid making tough but necessary decisions for fear of being disliked. They might take credit for others' work to bolster their own image. Their leadership is unstable because it is built on the sand of popular opinion. Conversely, the manager who acts with virtue focuses on doing what is right for the team and the project. They give credit freely, they make the hard calls with compassion, and they lead from a place of integrity. They may not be the most popular person in the room at every moment, but they earn a deep and lasting respect, and more importantly, they can look at themselves in the mirror each night with a clear conscience. Their power is not diminished by a bad review because it does not come from their title or their reputation. It comes from their character. This shift requires us to constantly examine our intentions. Why are we really doing what we are doing? Is it to be seen as a good person, or is it to be a good person? The former is still a form of seeking external validation, just dressed in the costume of virtue. The latter is the true Stoic aim. It's the difference between donating to charity for the public recognition and doing it quietly because alleviating suffering is the right thing to do. The action might look the same to an outside observer, but the internal experience and the resulting immunity to criticism is worlds apart. When you act for an audience of one, your own best self, you are liberated from the performance. You can make mistakes, you can be misunderstood, you can even fail spectacularly, and your core sense of worth remains intact because it was never tied to the outcome in the first place. Your success was in the trying, in the virtuous effort. So let's bring this directly into your day. I want you to take a moment and consider one specific action you can take today, purely because it is the right thing to do, with zero expectation of recognition or reward. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It could be as simple as offering sincere, private praise to a colleague who did good work without feeling the need to mention it to anyone else. It could be taking on a small, tedious task that needs to be done without complaining or seeking acknowledgement. It could be making a choice that aligns with your values, even if it's the less popular or more difficult path. The key is to consciously set the intention beforehand. I am doing this for its own sake because it is virtuous. Then, after you've done it, simply observe the feeling. There's a unique quality to the satisfaction that comes from a virtuous action undertaken in secret. It's a quiet, steady warmth that doesn't depend on anyone else's reaction. It is the feeling of your inner compass pointing true north, guiding you independently through the noisy, chaotic landscape of the world. This is the practice that forges a will of iron, a will that acts because it is right and is therefore free. The Stoics saw a web of cause and effect that modern physics echoes. This ancient principle, known as sympatheia, was their profound understanding that the universe is not a collection of random, disconnected events, but a single, living, rational whole where everything is interconnected. Think of it as a vast, intricate tapestry. From the front, you might see a single thread, a chaotic event in your life, a piece of harsh criticism, and it can look like a messy, meaningless knot. But the Stoics urge us to try and see the tapestry from the back, to glimpse the grander pattern that connects that single thread to every other. When you begin to perceive this interconnectedness, a fundamental shift occurs. The chaos that feels like a personal attack, the criticism that seems uniquely aimed at you, starts to lose its personal sting. You realize you are not an isolated target of a hostile universe, but a participant in a vast, flowing system where every event, even the difficult ones, emerges from a complex chain of causes that extends far beyond your individual story. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea to soothe his own soul amidst the immense pressures of leadership. He wrote to himself, "Meditate often on the interconnectedness and mutual interdependence of all things in the universe." He would reflect on how all things are intertwined and how they cooperate with one another, each contributing to the universal order. For him, even the most troublesome person or the most frustrating setback was a necessary part of this cosmic dance. They were not aberrations, they were expressions of the whole. This perspective is not a call to passive resignation, but an invitation to a deeper understanding. It's the difference between standing in a rainstorm and feeling like the clouds have a personal vendetta against you, and understanding that the storm is the result of immense, impersonal systems of atmospheric pressure, temperature, and wind patterns. You still get wet, but you are no longer offended by it. The event is the same, but your relationship to it is transformed from one of victimhood to one of witnessing a natural process. Let's apply this to a very modern source of chaos, a sudden market fluctuation that wipes out a portion of your investments. The immediate personal story you might tell is one of victimization. Why does this always happen to me? The market is rigged. This is a disaster. This narrative is isolating and infuriating. Now apply the lens of sympatheia. That market dip is not an event happening to you in a vacuum. It is the result of a near-infinite web of causes, geopolitical tensions on the other side of the world, decisions made in central banks, shifts in consumer confidence, technological breakthroughs, and the collective emotions of millions of investors. Your personal portfolio is simply one tiny point where all these global forces intersect. You are experiencing a ripple effect from 1,000 different ponds. This doesn't magically recover your money, but it does something more important. It drains the event of its personal malice. It wasn't an attack, it was a systemic occurrence. This understanding allows you to respond not with blind panic or rage, but with clarity. You can assess your position within the larger system and make reasoned adjustments, rather than reacting from a place of feeling personally targeted by an unjust world. The same logic beautifully diffuses the sting of societal criticism. Imagine you put forth an idea online or in a meeting, and it is met with a wave of negative feedback. The easy, ego-driven interpretation is to take it personally. They all hate me. They don't understand my genius. This feels like a siege on your identity, but Sympatheia asks you to see the larger pattern. Those critics are not acting in isolation. Their reactions are shaped by their own life experiences, their cultural conditioning, their fears, their educational background, and the social dynamics of the group. The criticism is not a pure judgment on your inherent worth. It is the output of a complex, interconnected social system. You are simply the current focal point for a confluence of pre-existing forces. This doesn't mean the feedback is invalid, but it allows you to evaluate it objectively, to sift through it for useful data about the system you're operating within, without letting it devastate your sense of self. You can see yourself as a node in a network receiving signals rather than a lone warrior under fire. This concept encourages a profound sense of belonging. Instead of feeling like a solitary boat being tossed by random waves, you begin to feel like you are the ocean itself, vast, deep, and containing the waves within you. The chaos and the criticism are not foreign invaders. They are part of the same natural world of which you are an inseparable part. This is the ultimate reframing. The Stoic goal is to align your individual will with this universal will, to see your own small role not as a struggle against the cosmos, but as a cooperation with it. When you can look at a difficulty and genuinely try to understand its place in the larger web, you move from resistance to curiosity, from anger to a calm, investigative calm. You start to ask not, why is this happening to me, but what is this part of, what can it teach me about the system? To make this a practical part of your mental immune system, take a moment to reflect on a recent chaotic event that felt disruptive or unfair. It could be anything from a major project cancellation at work to a personal disagreement that left you reeling. Now, instead of focusing on how it affected you personally, try to trace the web of causality backwards. What were the likely causes? Think about other people's motivations, larger organizational or societal trends, even seemingly unrelated events that may have set the stage. Then try to trace the web forward. How might this event cause ripple effects that you cannot yet see? How might it, in some unforeseen way, create an opportunity or prevent a larger problem? This exercise isn't about finding a silver lining. It's about stretching your perception to see the event as a link in a chain, rather than a broken piece. By practicing this regularly, you train your mind to default to a perspective of interconnectedness, which is a powerful antidote to the feelings of isolation and personal victimization that chaos so often brings. If today were your last, would this criticism matter? This is the stark, clarifying question at the heart of the Stoic practice of Memento Mori, the remembrance of death. Far from being a morbid fixation, this was considered by the ancients to be one of the most vital and life-affirming exercises imaginable. It is the ultimate filter for our attention, a tool that instantly separates the essential from the trivial. When you hold the finitude of your life consciously in mind, the noisy distractions of the world, the petty criticisms, the frantic busyness, the obsessive need to control minor outcomes begin to fade into the background like static. What rises to the foreground with brilliant clarity are the things that truly hold meaning: your character, your relationships, your contributions, the quality of your moments. Memento Mori is not a call to live in fear, but a profound invitation to live with purpose, to stop wasting your most precious and non-renewable resource, time, on things that simply do not matter in the final accounting. The Roman Stoics integrated this remembrance into their daily routines. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't dwelling on the gloom of death. He was using its certainty as a whetstone to sharpen his focus on living virtuously in the present. He understood that an awareness of life's brevity is the most powerful antidote to procrastination in matters of the soul. Why would you postpone an act of kindness? Why would you harbor a grudge over a slight that will be forgotten in a year? Why would you sacrifice your integrity for a promotion that, in the grand timeline of your existence, will be a fleeting footnote? Remembering that you will die strips away the illusions of permanence that we build around our petty concerns. It forces a radical honesty about how we are spending our days, compelling us to align our actions with our deepest values, because the opportunity to do so is not infinite. Consider how this perspective transforms your reaction to a common social slight. Imagine you're at a gathering and someone makes a rude, dismissive comment about you in front of others. The typical, ego-driven response might be a flush of embarrassment, followed by a defensive retort or hours of mental replay, crafting the perfect comeback. The event could ruin your entire evening. Now, view that exact same scenario through the lens of Memento Mori. The comment is the same, but you hold in your mind the awareness that your life is a finite gift. Is this momentary social embarrassment worthy of consuming an hour of your limited, precious life? Is the opinion of this person, who may not even be part of your life in 5 years, significant enough to derail your peace? The answer, when framed this way, becomes obvious. The sting vanishes, replaced by an almost amused detachment. You can acknowledge the comment, perhaps even respond with grace if necessary, and then let it go completely, your inner peace undisturbed because you are focused on a horizon far beyond the pettiness of the moment. This practice is the ultimate prioritization tool. It acts as a mental sieve, catching the large, important rocks of a well-lived life and letting the sand of trivial irritations pass through. Think about the things that cause you the most daily stress. The overflowing inbox, the traffic jam, the negative comment on a social media post, the worry about what a colleague thinks of you. Now apply the Memento Mori filter. Project yourself to the end of your life and look back. Will you wish you had spent more time anxiously refreshing your email? Will you regret not getting into that online argument? Or will your thoughts turn to the moments of genuine connection, the times you acted with courage, the love you gave and received, the peace you cultivated within yourself? The remembrance of death doesn't make you abandon your responsibilities. It makes you execute them with a different spirit. You still answer the emails and navigate the traffic, but you do so without the frantic anxiety, because you understand these are small parts of a much larger, more meaningful picture. The power of this exercise lies in its ability to shrink our imagined problems down to their true size. We inflate our worries, giving them an importance they do not deserve, because we act as if we have an endless supply of time to deal with them. Memento Mori pops that bubble. It reveals that many of the things we treat as emergencies are merely inconveniences, and many of the things we treat as important are actually irrelevant. This creates a tremendous sense of freedom. You are liberated from the need to please everyone, from the fear of minor failures, and from the obsession with controlling every detail. You are freed to focus on what the Stoics called the summum bonum, the highest good, which is living a life of virtue and reason. When your time is understood to be limited, every moment becomes an opportunity to practice that highest good. To integrate this powerful filter into your own life, I challenge you to a simple but profound writing exercise. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the center. On the left side, write down the top 5 concerns that are currently occupying your mental energy. Be honest. They might be things like impressing my new boss, worrying about a project deadline, or feeling hurt by a friend's comment. Now, on the right side, write down the 5 things that you truly believe in your heart of hearts. will matter most to you when you look back on your life from its end. These are likely to be things like being a kind person, raising good children, making a positive difference, living with integrity, or experiencing deep love. Now compare the two lists. How much overlap is there? How much of your current mental real estate is being devoted to the items on the left, which may have little to do with the items on the right? This stark visual contrast is the essence of Memento Mori in action. It is a call to consciously, courageously, and continuously shift your focus from the noisy distractions on the left to the quiet, enduring priorities on the right. Start making choices today that the person you will be at the end of your life will be proud of. Fighting a river's current exhausts you, flowing with it conserves your strength. This is the essence of the Stoic art of acquiescence, a sophisticated virtue that is often misunderstood as simple passivity or defeatism. Nothing could be further from the truth. Acquiescence is not about giving up. It is about giving into reality with clear-eyed intelligence, thereby conserving your most vital resource, your inner peace for the battles you can actually win. It is the conscious, deliberate choice to stop arguing with the facts of a situation and to start working with them. The great teacher Epictetus, who knew more than most about facing circumstances he could not control, directed his students to focus on making the best use of what is in our power and to take everything else as it naturally happens. He said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This is the core of acquiescence. It is the graceful and strategic surrender to necessity, which paradoxically is the first step toward regaining a sense of control over your own inner state. The critical distinction here is between passive resignation and active acceptance. Passive resignation is a state of helplessness, a sigh of defeat that says, "There's nothing I can do," and often leads to apathy or despair. It is a relinquishment of all agency. Stoic acquiescence, on the other hand, is an act of profound agency. It is an intelligent recognition of the battlefield. You survey the situation, you identify with brutal honesty what is unchangeable, and you formally cease your internal war against those immovable facts. This act alone stops the energy drain. The moment you stop trying to push over a brick wall with your bare hands, you free up your strength to look for the gate, or to build a ladder, or to simply walk a different, more productive path. The wall remains, but your relationship to it transforms from one of futile conflict to one of pragmatic engagement. Let's take a very common modern scenario that tests our ability to acquiesce: a flight cancellation. You're at the airport, excited for a vacation or anxious for an important meeting. The announcement comes over the speaker: your flight is cancelled due to weather. The external event, the cancelled flight, is a fact. It is as real and unchangeable as the brick wall. Now observe the two possible responses. The first is to fight the current. This person storms up to the gate agent, their face flushed with anger. They argue, they complain about the incompetence of the airline, they lament the ruin of their plans. They are, in effect, shaking their fist at the storm clouds. This expenditure of energy does not change the weather. It does not materialize a new aircraft. All it accomplishes is to elevate their own blood pressure, ruin their mood, and likely alienate the very person who has the power to help them rebook. They are exhausted and they are still not on a plane. Now, observe the person who practices Stoic acquiescence. They hear the same announcement. They likely feel the same initial jolt of disappointment. The Stoics never deny the initial impression. But then they apply the discipline. They quickly assess the dichotomy of control. The weather and the airline's decision are outside their power. Their reaction, their next actions, are within their power. They acquiesce to the reality of the cancellation. They accept it fully. This acceptance is not a slumped shoulder defeat. It is a calm, strategic pivot. They take a breath, walk calmly to the service desk, and say, "I understand the flight is cancelled. What are my options for getting to my destination?" They have redirected all their energy from the futile task of protesting the past to the productive task of managing the present. They are flowing with the river's current, using its momentum to steer toward a new shore. They may even end up on a better routing or discover an unexpected layover city. By yielding to necessity, they have become more effective, not less. This principle applies to much larger life events as well. Consider receiving a difficult medical diagnosis for a chronic condition. Passive resignation would be to give up on life, to see oneself as a victim of fate, and to succumb to despair. Stoic acquiescence is entirely different. It is the courageous act of accepting the diagnosis as the new reality. This doesn't mean you like it or that you stop seeking the best treatment. It means you stop wasting energy on the question, "Why me?" and you start focusing all your resources on the question, "What now?" You accept the condition as a part of your life's landscape, a river you must now learn to navigate. This acceptance is the foundation for resilience. It allows you to adapt, to find new ways to live meaningfully within the constraints of your health, and to appreciate the moments of wellness you do have with heightened gratitude. The condition hasn't changed, but your capacity to live a good life within it has expanded dramatically because you are no longer exhausting yourself in a futile war against a fact. Acquiescence is the practical application of the view from above. When you see your life from a cosmic perspective, you recognize that much of what happens is simply the unfolding of natural cause and effect of a universe that is largely indifferent to your personal plans. To rage against this is as sensible as a fish raging against the water. Acquiescence is the wisdom of the fish that learns to swim. It is an alignment with the nature of things, which the Stoics believed was the ultimate source of freedom. When you stop trying to command the ocean and instead learn to sail your ship skillfully upon it, you discover a tranquility that is impossible for the person who is always shouting at the waves. To begin weaving this powerful art into the fabric of your daily life, I want you to take a quiet moment for reflection. Identify one unavoidable situation in your current experience. It might be a demanding family obligation, a physical limitation, a long commute, or a personality trait in a colleague that you find grating, something that you know deep down you cannot fundamentally change. Now, instead of mentally fighting it or resenting it each day, I invite you to experiment with a stance of intelligent acceptance for just 1 week. Each time you encounter this situation, consciously remind yourself, this is the river. I cannot change its flow. Then ask the pivotal question, given that this is the reality, how can I best use my energy to navigate it with grace and effectiveness? This simple shift in questioning moves you from a position of resistance to a position of resourcefulness. You are not surrendering your power, you are redirecting it to the only arena where it can truly make a difference: your response. This is how you stop exhausting yourself against the current and start flowing with a strength that is both calm and unstoppable. Your mind has a gate. Don't let every thought and feeling storm in unchallenged. This is the essence of the next critical discipline in building your mental immunity, the practice of guarding your impressions. Think of your consciousness not as an open field where any passing thought can set up camp, but as a fortified citadel with a single, heavily guarded entrance. The initial spark of any experience, the sight, the sound, the piece of news, is what the Stoics called an impression. It's the raw data that arrives at the gate. But the impression itself is not the problem, it's neutral. The pivotal moment, the split second that determines your peace or your turmoil, comes next. It is the moment you choose whether to grant that impression entry, to assent to it, to believe the story it is telling you. Most of us fling the gates open wide, allowing every impression to rush in, unpack its bags, and start rearranging the furniture of our minds without any vetting process. The Stoic, however, stations a gatekeeper at this entrance. That gatekeeper is your faculty of judgment, and its sole job is to pause, to question, and to decide rationally what gets in. The power of this practice lies entirely in that deliberate pause, the sacred space between the stimulus and your response. It is in this brief gap that your freedom resides. The philosopher Epictetus, who laid out this principle with unmatched clarity, instructed his students, "Don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, 'Hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test.' This is the ultimate act of mental self-defense. You are not a puppet whose strings are jerked by every external event. You are the one who holds the strings, but only if you take that moment to check the impulse before you assent to it. That initial flush of anger when you're cut off in traffic. That's the impression knocking at the gate, the choice to lean on the horn, shout obscenities, and let the incident ruin your next hour. That is you flinging the gate open and giving the impression full control. The alternative, the Stoic response, is to feel the flush of anger. You can't stop that initial physiological reaction, but then to have the gatekeeper step forward. It holds up a hand and says, "Wait, this person's action is outside my control. My judgment that this is a terrible, personal insult is what will cause my suffering, not the action itself. I choose not to assent to that judgment." Let's make this vividly practical with the modern example of receiving a critical email. You see the notification pop up on your screen. You open it, and within seconds, your body tenses. Your heart rate jumps. A hot wave of defensiveness or shame washes over you. That visceral, emotional surge is the impression. It's automatic, a primal alarm bell ringing. In the old, unguarded way of living, you would immediately assent to this impression. You would believe the story it's screaming at you. This is an attack. I am being disrespected. I must defend myself immediately. And so, in the heat of that moment, you fire off a reactive, sharp, and likely regrettable reply. You have allowed the impression to storm the castle and command the troops. Now, let's replay that scenario with a Stoic gatekeeper on duty. The email arrives. The same initial wave of emotion hits you. The gatekeeper doesn't stop the knock at the door, but instead of reaching for the keyboard, you lean back. You take a single, deep breath. In that 3-second pause, the gatekeeper does its work. It questions the impression. It says, "This is just a collection of words on a screen. The sender's opinion is outside my control. Is there any useful truth here I can extract? Is my worth as a person determined by this one message?" By creating this space, you move from a reactive animal to a reasoning human. Your eventual response, if you choose to send one at all, will be measured, professional, and rooted in your values, not your fears. The impression lost its power the moment you refused to immediately believe it. This discipline is the practical application of everything we've discussed so far. The dichotomy of control tells you what is yours to command, your assent. The inner citadel is the space you protect by guarding the gate. The view from above provides the perspective the gatekeeper uses to assess the true size of the threat. Guarding your impressions is the moment-by-moment practice that brings the philosophy to life. It turns Stoicism from a set of ideas you think about on a quiet morning into a set of tools you use in the heat of a stressful afternoon. It is the micro-habit that, over time, forges a macro-transformation in your resilience. Every time you successfully pause and question a negative impression, you are not just avoiding a single bad reaction, you are strengthening the gatekeeper itself. You are building a muscle of mindful awareness that becomes stronger and faster with each repetition. The impressions that demand the most vigilant guarding are often the ones tied to our deepest insecurities: the fear of being judged incompetent, the worry of not being liked, the anxiety of losing control. These impressions are like skilled salesmen who know exactly which buttons to push. They don't just knock, they try to charm or threaten their way inside. This is why the gatekeeper must be both patient and skeptical. It must learn to recognize these familiar, persuasive voices and meet them with the same calm questioning. I see you again, fear of failure. You're telling me that if this project isn't perfect, it will be a catastrophe. Let me test that. Is that truly a fact, or is it just a story I've told myself for years? By personifying these impressions, you externalize them. They are not you, they are visitors trying to gain influence over you. You remain the sovereign ruler of your mind, granting audience only to those thoughts that pass the test of reason and virtue. To truly integrate this practice, you need to make it tangible. So here is a simple, immediate challenge. For the next 24 hours, I want you to practice the 3-second pause. You don't need to announce it to anyone. This is an internal mission. The next time you feel a strong negative impression, a surge of irritation at a slow-moving cashier, a jolt of anxiety from a worrying headline, a pang of jealousy from a social media post, your only task is to insert a deliberate pause before you react externally or even internally. In that pause, take one conscious breath, and in the space of that breath, silently say to the impression, I see you. I will decide how to respond. You don't need to have a full philosophical debate with yourself in that moment. The goal is simply to interrupt the automatic chain reaction, to create a crack of daylight between the event and your response. That crack is where your freedom grows. It might feel awkward or forced at first, but with practice, it will become your new default. This is how you stop being a slave to your first impressions and start becoming the master of your mind. Athletes train for the game, Stoics train for life's hardships. This simple analogy captures the profound purpose behind the Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort. It's the conscious decision to periodically step out of our modern cocoon of convenience and invite a small, manageable dose of difficulty into our lives. Why would anyone do this? It's not about punishing yourself or embracing misery for its own sake. It is a form of strategic training, a way to inoculate your mind against the inevitable shocks and disruptions that life will throw your way. By willingly experiencing minor hardships, you are building a resilience muscle, making your peace of mind less dependent on everything going perfectly. You are proving to yourself through direct experience that you can handle discomfort, that you can endure inconvenience, and that your well-being is not hostage to your external circumstances. This practice systematically reduces the fear of chaos because you are no longer terrified of feeling a little cold, a little hungry, or a little tired. You transform comfort from a fragile necessity into a pleasant preference, and in doing so, you dramatically expand your sense of inner control. The Roman Stoics were adamant about the value of this kind of tough training. Musonius Rufus, a teacher of Epictetus, argued that comfort and luxury make the soul weak, while effort and hardship make it strong. He believed that just as a soldier who never trains will be useless in battle, a person who never practices enduring difficulty will be shattered by the first sign of adversity. Seneca, too, frequently engaged in what he called hardship diets. He would periodically Chinese letter, sleep on a hard bed and eat plain, simple food. He wasn't doing this because he had to. He was a wealthy man. He was doing it as a psychological exercise. He wrote that by doing so, he was sending a message to fortune: I have nothing to leave to chance. He was building a firewall between his happiness and the whims of fate. If he lost his wealth tomorrow, it would be an inconvenience, not a catastrophe, because he had already familiarized himself with a simpler way of living. This is the ultimate goal, to desensitize yourself to the fear of loss. When you voluntarily give up a comfort, you are not losing anything, you are gaining confidence. You are demonstrating that you are more than your possessions, more than your routines, more than your physical sensations. The modern applications of this are incredibly practical and accessible to anyone. You don't need to sleep on the floor like Seneca to start building this muscle. The key is to find small, deliberate disruptions to your normal patterns of ease. Start with something as simple as taking a cold shower for the final 30 seconds of your morning routine. That initial shock of cold water is a miniature version of an unexpected life event. Your body will scream in protest, but your mind has the opportunity to practice a calm, deliberate response. You learn that the discomfort is temporary, that it won't harm you, and that you have the capacity to breathe through it. Another powerful practice is to occasionally skip a meal, not for dietary reasons but for mental training. Feel the pangs of hunger and observe them with curiosity rather than panic. Notice that the feeling rises and falls, and that your ability to think and function remains intact. This directly attacks the fear of scarcity. Or try taking a harder route to work, walking instead of driving on a rainy day, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator when you're carrying a heavy bag. Each of these small acts is a rep in the gym of your mind. You are lifting the weight of discomfort, and with each lift you get stronger. This practice builds immunity by a process of exposure therapy. When you voluntarily face a controlled version of a stressor discomfort, you rob the uncontrolled versions of their power to terrify you. Think of it like this: if you've never felt cold, the first chilly day of autumn can feel like a brutal assault. But if you voluntarily stood in a cold shower, the autumn breeze is nothing. It's the same principle with emotional and psychological discomfort. If you've practiced sitting with the feeling of being slightly hungry, you are better equipped to handle the financial uncertainty of a job loss. If you've practiced embracing the physical challenge of a long walk, you are more resilient when faced with the exhausting demands of a personal crisis. You have a deep-seated knowledge etched into your nervous system through experience that you can endure. This knowledge is a quiet, unshakable confidence that lies beneath the surface of your daily life, a confidence that allows you to meet chaos not with panic, but with the calm assessment of a seasoned professional. So, the challenge for you this week is to consciously choose one small voluntary discomfort. It should be something safe and manageable, but something that genuinely pushes you slightly outside your comfort zone. Perhaps it's leaving your phone at home when you go for a walk, forcing yourself to be alone with your thoughts. Maybe it's having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, willingly stepping into the temporary discomfort of conflict for the sake of a greater resolution. It could be as simple as fasting from complaining for an entire day, or doing a tedious household chore without listening to a podcast or music. Whatever you choose, the important part is your intention. As you do it, remind yourself why. You are not being punished, you are being trained. You are a stoic athlete, and this is your workout. Pay close attention to the sensations, the urges to quit, and the moment when you realize you are stronger than the discomfort. That moment of realization is where true immunity is forged, one voluntary challenge at a time. What if every obstacle was placed there for your training? This is the profound and reassuring question at the heart of the Stoic understanding of providence, the belief that the universe is not a chaotic, random accident, but a rational, ordered whole where everything, even the most difficult events, has a purpose in our development. This perspective is perhaps the most challenging yet ultimately liberating step in building a mind immune to chaos. It invites us to shift from seeing ourselves as victims of a cruel or indifferent world to seeing ourselves as students in a vast, rigorous, and ultimately benevolent school. When you can look at a setback and genuinely ask, "What is this here to teach me?" you transform it from a punishment to a lesson. The chaos doesn't disappear, but its power to shatter your peace is neutralized because you are no longer fighting against it. You are leaning in to learn from it. This isn't about blind faith or simplistic positivity. It's about a deep trust in the fundamental reasonableness of nature's processes, a trust that fosters a profound and unshakable equanimity. Marcus Aurelius, constantly grappling with the immense burdens of leadership, returned to this idea as his anchor. He wrote to himself in his meditations, "Everything that happens, happens justly. And accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." He is not suggesting that every event is morally good in a human sense, but that it is just and right within the larger, rational order of the cosmos. He saw the universe as a single, living entity, and every occurrence, from the falling of a leaf to the rise of an empire, as a necessary part of that entity's healthy functioning. For us, this means that the criticism you face, the project that fails, the unexpected loss you endure, these are not meaningless interruptions to your life's plan. They are integral threads in the fabric of your particular journey, each one placed with a kind of cosmic intention to sand away your rough edges, to strengthen your virtues, and to guide you toward the person you are capable of becoming. The obstacle is not in the way, the obstacle is the way. To make this abstract concept tangible, consider a personal story that many can relate to, an unexpected job loss. Imagine someone who has dedicated years to a company, finding their identity and security in their position. Suddenly, they are called into a room and told their role is being eliminated. The initial impression is one of sheer catastrophe, a personal failure, a financial threat, a devastating blow to their self-worth. This is the unexamined view. Now let's view this same event through the lens of Stoic providence. The loss of the job is the fact, but what if this event, as painful as it is, was a necessary correction in the universe's curriculum for this person? Perhaps they had become complacent in that role, their growth had stagnated, and their true talents were being wasted on tasks that didn't fulfill them. The loss, framed as providence, forces them out of a comfortable but limiting cage. It compels them to reassess their skills, to network in new ways, and to confront fears they had been avoiding. After a period of struggle, they find a new career path that is more aligned with their values, offering more creativity and autonomy than they ever thought possible. Looking back, they might see the job loss not as a punishment, but as the painful yet essential push they needed to step into a more authentic and rewarding life. The event didn't change, but the story they told about it transformed it from a tragedy into a turning point. This trust in a rational order is the ultimate reframe for dealing with criticism and chaos. When a harsh critique lands, instead of it being a random act of malice, it becomes a potential source of valuable feedback, however poorly delivered. It might highlight a blind spot you need to address or toughen your resolve to stay true to your path despite opposition. When plans fall apart and chaos reigns, instead of seeing it as the universe conspiring against you, you can look for the new possibilities that the disruption has revealed. A cancelled flight might lead to a chance encounter. A failed project might teach a lesson that prevents a much larger failure down the road. The Stoic doesn't just endure these events, they actively look for the hidden logic within them. This doesn't mean you become passive, quite the opposite. You engage with the world more fully, but you do so with the trust of a skilled sailor on a vast ocean. You know you will encounter storms, but you also trust in your ability to navigate them and in the ocean's inherent nature to eventually return to calm. Your efforts are not futile, they are your part in cooperating with the universe's grand purpose. This perspective requires a certain humility. It asks us to admit that our limited personal view is not the entire picture. What looks like a disaster from our narrow vantage point might be a crucial step in a larger process we cannot yet see. Trusting providence is an act of faith in reason itself, a belief that even in suffering there is meaning to be found, a strength to be built, a lesson to be integrated. It is the final layer of protection for your inner citadel, because when you believe that everything serves a purpose, nothing can truly be an enemy. Everything is grist for the mill of your character. Now I want you to bring this home. Think back on your own life to a past difficulty that felt overwhelming at the time, a breakup, a financial struggle, a personal failure. With the benefit of hindsight, can you now see a strength that was forged in that fire? Can you identify a lesson that you carry with you today? Perhaps the heartbreak taught you what you truly value in a partner. Maybe the financial scare instilled in you a more resilient and intelligent approach to money. That failure might have closed one door but forced you to discover a talent or a passion you would have otherwise neglected. Take a moment to reflect on how that past challenge, as painful as it was, ultimately contributed to the person you are now. This exercise isn't about denying the pain you felt, but about completing the story, about seeing the obstacle not just as a barrier, but as the very thing that trained you to climb higher. This is how you practice trusting the rational order, by looking back at the evidence of your own life and seeing how often the difficult chapters were, in fact, the most instructive. Add 2 words to every goal, if nothing prevents it. This simple, silent addition is the essence of the Stoic reserve clause, a powerful mental technique that acts as a subtle but profound release valve for the pressure we place on ourselves. It is the practice of prefixing or concluding any plan or ambition with an unspoken acknowledgement of reality. I will achieve this, fate permitting, or I will do my best to make this happen if nothing interferes. This is not a mantra of doubt or a recipe for low expectations. On the contrary, it is a declaration of profound wisdom. It is the explicit recognition of a fundamental truth we have been exploring, that our domain of absolute control begins and ends with our own actions, our intentions, and our efforts. The final outcome, however, always rests in the hands of a complex world filled with variables we cannot possibly command. The reserve clause builds immunity to chaos by surgically separating these 2 realms, ensuring that your sense of accomplishment and your inner peace are tied to the quality of your attempt, not to the lottery of the result. The Roman philosopher Seneca offers some of the clearest guidance on this practice. He advised that we should embark on all our endeavors with a kind of tempered resolve. He suggested that we ought to say, "I will sail across the ocean if nothing prevents me." Notice the power in that formulation. The intention is clear and strong, the will to sail is undiminished. But the clause, "if nothing prevents me," is a graceful bow to the vast forces of nature, weather, health, and fortune that are ultimately in charge of the voyage. Seneca wrote that the wise person plans for interruptions to their plans. He doesn't see these interruptions as personal failures or cosmic injustices, but as part of the natural order of things. By building this expectation into the very architecture of our goals, we preemptively disarm the frustration and disappointment that arise when life inevitably diverges from our carefully laid scripts. Your plan is your hypothesis about how the world should work, The reserve clause is your respectful acknowledgement that the world may have other ideas. Let's bring this to life with a very relatable ambition, asking for a promotion. You've worked tirelessly for months. You've exceeded your targets, taken on extra responsibilities, and prepared a compelling case for why you deserve the new role. You schedule the meeting with your manager, your heart pounding with a mix of hope and anxiety. Now, observe the two different ways you can frame this goal in your mind. The first and most common way is to tie your entire self-worth and future happiness to the single outcome of getting a yes. Your inner monologue says, "I must get this promotion. My career depends on it. If I don't get it, I'm a failure." This approach turns the meeting room into a high-stakes courtroom where your value as a human being is on trial. The pressure is immense, and a no feels like a devastating verdict. Now apply the Stoic reserve clause. Your goal transforms. It is no longer "I will get the promotion." It becomes "I will present my case for the promotion as clearly and confidently as I can, and I will accept the outcome with equanimity, fate permitting." Do you feel the shift? The entire center of gravity moves. The locus of your success is now located squarely within your own actions, preparing thoroughly, speaking with integrity, making your argument persuasively. These are things you have 100% control over. The decision itself, however, is placed firmly in the category of external events. It depends on the company's budget, your manager's biases, the presence of other candidates, 1,000 factors outside your command. By adding this clause, you walk into that meeting with a different energy. You are still ambitious and eager, but you are also free. You can perform at your best because you are not paralyzed by the fear of a specific outcome. If the answer is yes, you celebrate. If the answer is no, you are certainly disappointed, but you are not shattered. You can calmly assess the feedback, learn from the experience, and begin planning your next steps. Your peace was never on the table. It remained safely within you, tied to your virtuous effort. This practice is the ultimate antidote to the toxic must-have mentality that plagues our achievement-oriented culture. It replaces rigid attachment with focused intention. It's the difference between a gardener who demands that a specific seed must become a specific flower by a specific date, and a gardener who carefully tends to the soil, provides water and sunlight, and then trusts the natural process. The anxious gardener will be in constant turmoil, worried about every cloud and every bug. The Stoic gardener finds satisfaction in the quality of their cultivation, knowing that the final bloom, while hoped for, is subject to forces beyond their direct control. This mindset doesn't make you less effective. It makes you more resilient and therefore more capable of sustained effort over the long term. You are no longer playing a desperate, all-or-nothing game with the universe. To weave this powerful clause into the fabric of your own thinking, I want you to take a moment and bring to mind a goal you are currently deeply invested in. It could be a fitness target, a creative project, a financial milestone, or a personal relationship you are trying to improve. Now, silently articulate that goal to yourself, but frame it with the Stoic reserve clause. Say to yourself, "My intention is to achieve this, and I will put forth my best effort toward that end," understanding that the final result depends on many factors outside my sole control. Feel how that formulation creates a space around your ambition, a buffer zone that protects your core well-being from the volatility of fortune. It allows you to strive with all your heart while simultaneously holding the outcome lightly. This is the graceful dance of the Stoic, full engagement with a calm detachment, a combination that produces not passive observers of life, but active, joyful, and unbreakable participants. What would a perfectly wise person do in this situation? This single question can cut through the noise of our reactive emotions and provide a beacon of clarity when we feel lost in criticism or chaos. The Stoics understood the immense power of having a moral and intellectual ideal to aspire to, and they gave this ideal a name, the sage. It is crucial to understand that the Stoic sage is not a historical figure you can look up in a biography. You won't find a perfect, flawless human being who never made a mistake. Instead, the sage is a conceptual model, a thought experiment representing the pinnacle of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Think of it as the North Star for your moral compass. You never expect to actually reach the star, but by keeping your eyes fixed on its constant, guiding light, you can navigate the turbulent seas of life without veering hopelessly off course. The sage is the embodiment of everything we have been discussing, the perfect application of the dichotomy of control, the unshakable calm of the inner citadel, the loving acceptance of amor fati. This ideal serves as a constant reminder of what is possible for a human mind to achieve, and it gives us a concrete standard against which to measure our own choices. The Stoics were practical philosophers, and they introduced this lofty ideal for an intensely practical reason: to give us a tool for moving beyond the narrow confines of our own ego in the heat of the moment. When you are personally invested in a situation, when your pride feels attacked or your plans are crumbling, your perspective becomes incredibly small. You are trapped inside the story of me, my insult, my failure, my disappointment. This ego tunnel vision is what leads to rash, regrettable actions. But when you pause and invoke the mental model of the sage, you are forcibly zooming out. You are asking yourself not what your wounded pride wants to do, but what a figure of perfect wisdom and virtue would do. This simple act of mental substitution creates a critical gap between the stimulus and your response. It allows you to bypass the petty, reactive self and access a higher, more reasoned version of yourself. The sage doesn't have an ego to defend. The sage is not concerned with saving face or getting even. The sage's only concern is acting in accordance with nature and reason, which means responding to every event with virtue. Consider a moment we all face. You are in a meeting and a colleague publicly dismisses your idea in a condescending and unfair way. Your face flushes with heat. The impulse to fire back a sharp retort to put them in their place is almost overwhelming. This is the ego feeling threatened and lashing out. Now, in that sliver of a second before you speak, you invoke the sage. You silently ask, what would a perfectly wise person do here? The answer unfolds not as a complex philosophical treatise, but as a clear, calm series of thoughts. The sage would recognize that the colleague's behavior is outside their control, a reflection of that person's own character. The sage would feel no need to defend their own idea with anger, because their self-worth isn't tied to the approval of others. The sage would likely respond with calm clarity, perhaps saying something like, "I appreciate the feedback. Let's examine the data together to find the best path forward." This response is not weak, it is incredibly strong. It de-escalates the conflict, maintains your dignity, and keeps the focus on the work rather than the personal clash. By modeling the sage, you have transformed a potential battlefield into an opportunity to demonstrate professional poise. This practice is incredibly flexible because you get to define the attributes of your personal sage. What does your ideal wise person look like? Perhaps your sage is a composite of historical figures you admire: the calm authority of Marcus Aurelius, the piercing honesty of Epictetus, the compassionate wisdom of someone like Nelson Mandela. Maybe your sage is a fictional character from a book or film who embodies unwavering integrity. Or perhaps it's an idealized version of your future self, the person you're striving to become. The key is to imbue this mental model with specific, vivid qualities. What is their tone of voice? It is likely calm and measured. What is their posture? It is probably grounded and open. How do they handle frustration with patience and a focus on solutions? The more detail you can add to this internal archetype, the more real and accessible it becomes in your moments of need. This sage persona becomes a trusted internal advisor, a counsel of one that you can consult whenever you feel your balance slipping. To truly integrate this tool into your mental immune system, I encourage you to take a proactive step. Sometime today, when you are in a calm and reflective state, take a few minutes to consciously create your own sage. You might even want to write down a brief description. Give this wise guide a name if it helps. Define their core principles. How would they handle criticism? They would listen for truth, discard the noise, and respond with gratitude for the lesson. How would they face a sudden crisis? They would first secure their own inner calm, assess the facts objectively, and then take decisive, virtuous action. How would they deal with a difficult person? They would seek to understand rather than to be understood, showing compassion for the ignorance or pain that drives the other's behavior. By doing this work in advance, you are programming your mind. You are creating a neural pathway so that when turmoil strikes, the question, "What would my sage do?" arises automatically, offering a lifeline to your higher self. This isn't about achieving perfection. It's about having a clear direction for growth. Every time you choose to act as your sage would, you are not just solving a problem. You are actively building the character of the person you want to be. In Stoicism, control is an inside job. The more you try to control the outside, the less control you actually have. This is the central paradox that lies at the very heart of building a mind immune to chaos, and it is perhaps the most counterintuitive yet liberating realization on this entire journey. We spend so much of our lives operating under a fundamental misconception. We believe that to be safe and happy, we must manage the world around us. We try to control other people's opinions, the flow of traffic, the stock market, the weather, and the outcomes of every situation. We exhaust ourselves in this futile external campaign, and in the process, we surrender the only territory we ever truly governed, our own inner world. The paradox is that the moment you stop trying to command the ocean and instead focus on perfecting your ability to sail, you discover a form of control that is absolute, unshakable, and entirely your own. This is the profound shift from seeking power over your circumstances to cultivating power within your response to them. The great teacher Epictetus, whose wisdom forms the bedrock of this understanding, drew a bright, unyielding line around the domain of what is truly up to us. He taught that our faculty of choice, our ability to form judgments, to direct our desires and aversions, to initiate action, this and only this is our rightful possession. Everything else, from the body we inhabit to the reputation we hold in the minds of others, is not truly under our command. It is not up to us. When we ignore this distinction, when we invest our sense of control in these externals, we are building our house on sand. The slightest shift in the winds of fortune can bring the entire structure crashing down, leaving us feeling helpless and victimized. But when we redirect our energy inward, when we pour our efforts into mastering our judgments and aligning our actions with virtue, we are building on the solid rock of our own character. The storms may rage, but the foundation holds firm. The less you seek to manipulate the outside, the more you command the inside, and the inside is the only place from which real, lasting power flows. Consider the stark contrast between two types of leaders, a contrast that brings this paradox to life in a professional setting. First, picture the classic micromanager. This individual operates under the illusion that control is about overseeing every detail. They hover over their team's shoulders, demanding constant updates, second-guessing decisions, and needing to approve every minor step. Their desk is a monument to stress buried under charts, reports, and to-do lists aimed at forcing the world to conform to their precise blueprint. The result: they are perpetually anxious, their team feels disempowered and resentful, and the entire system becomes brittle. The slightest unexpected event, a team member getting sick, a supplier delay, sends them into a tailspin because their sense of control was entirely dependent on a perfect, predictable external sequence of events that the universe rarely provides. They sought control everywhere but the one place it could be found, and in doing so they lost it completely. Now, observe the leader who embodies the Stoic paradox. This person understands that their true role is not to control their team's every action, but to control their own leadership, their clarity of communication, their fairness in judgment, their courage in making tough calls, and their resilience in the face of setbacks. They set a clear vision and provide the necessary resources. Then they empower their team to execute, trusting in their capabilities. When a crisis hits, this leader does not panic and start grasping for levers to pull. They retreat for a moment into their inner citadel. They assess the situation with objective clarity, distinguishing between what is within their sphere of influence, their team's morale, their own next decision, and what is not: the market downturn, the competitor's action. From this place of inner command, they respond with calm determination. Their team, sensing this unshakable core, feels confident and supported. The leader's power is not diminished by the chaos, it is magnified. By relinquishing the futile attempt to control every external variable, they have gained supreme command over the only thing that truly matters in a crisis: their own reasoned, virtuous response. This principle extends far beyond the office and into the most personal aspects of our lives. Think about a parent trying to control their adult child's life choices. The more the parent pushes, critiques, and tries to steer, the more resistance they create, damaging the relationship and causing themselves immense anguish. The parent's sense of peace becomes hostage to the child's decisions, which are ultimately not theirs to make. The Stoic approach would be for the parent to focus on what is up to them, offering love and advice when appropriate, setting healthy boundaries, and managing their own anxiety and judgments about the situation. By letting go of the need to control the outcome, the parent regains control over their own emotional well-being and often creates the space for a more authentic, respectful relationship to flourish. The same dynamic applies to our health, our finances, our creative projects, any area where we are tempted to focus on a result rather than the quality of our own effort. The paradox of control is the ultimate key to tranquility because it ends the war with reality. It is the acknowledgement that the world will unfold according to its own complex laws, and our power does not lie in bending those laws to our will, but in bending our will to align with them. This is not passive surrender, it is active, intelligent cooperation. It is the difference between a novice swimmer thrashing against a current, quickly exhausting themselves, and an expert swimmer who understands the water's flow, using its energy to propel themselves forward with grace and efficiency. The Stoic is the expert swimmer in the river of life. They conserve their strength for the movements that matter. They don't fight the current unnecessarily, and they arrive at their destination not drained and battered, but energized and composed. To make this paradox a living reality in your own experience, I want you to try a simple but powerful exercise of release. Bring to mind one specific external thing you consistently find yourself trying to control. It might be the mood of your partner, the punctuality of a coworker, the success of a particular venture, or even the state of the world as reported in the news. Now, for just the next 24 hours, make a conscious pact with yourself to practice letting go of the effort to control that one thing. This doesn't mean you stop caring or taking appropriate action. It means you internally release the demand that this external factor must conform to your preferences for you to be at peace. Each time you feel the familiar urge to manage, manipulate, or worry about it, gently remind yourself, this is not up to me. My peace is up to me. Redirect the energy you would have spent on that external struggle inward, toward maintaining your own calm judgment and virtuous intention. Notice what happens. You will likely discover a sense of lightness, a liberation from a weight you didn't even know you were carrying. This is the feeling of the paradox resolving itself, the feeling of gaining control by letting go. The Stoic is an alchemist turning the lead of obstacles into the gold of character. This is not merely optimistic reframing. It is a radical and proactive discipline of perception that lies at the very core of building an immune mind. It is the practice of looking directly at a barrier, a setback, or a source of friction, and instead of seeing a roadblock, you see a training ground. Every single challenge that life presents, from the minor irritations to the major crises, contains within it the raw material to strengthen a specific virtue. The obstacle is not something to be endured and then forgotten. It is the very whetstone upon which you can sharpen your courage, your patience, your resilience, or your creativity. This alchemical shift transforms your entire relationship with difficulty. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and you start asking, "What virtue is this situation inviting me to practice?" In that simple change of question, you move from being a passive victim of circumstances to an active participant in your own moral and mental development. Marcus Aurelius offered what might be the most concise and powerful summary of this principle when he wrote in his Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Let that idea settle for a moment. The thing that seems to block your path doesn't just get moved aside, it is integrated into the path itself. The barrier is not an interruption to your journey, it is an essential part of the route. This is the ultimate reframing. It means that there is no such thing as a true dead end for the Stoic practitioner, only a different and often more instructive direction. A river blocking your way forces you to learn to build a bridge or to swim. The obstacle of the river advanced your skills in engineering or perseverance. The problem of the river created the solution of new capabilities. This is how the Stoic operates in every domain of life, treating each hindrance as a custom-designed lesson from the universe, meant specifically for their growth. To make this vividly practical, let's apply it to two very common modern scenarios. First, consider a difficult person in your life, a colleague who is consistently negative, a family member who is overly critical, or a neighbor who is endlessly demanding. The standard, unexamined reaction is to see this person as a drain on your energy, an obstacle to your peace. You might avoid them, complain about them, or simmer with resentment. But through the Stoic lens, this difficult person is presented to you as a perfect training partner for the virtue of patience. They are offering you countless, repetitive opportunities to practice controlling your irritation, to listen without immediately reacting, to respond with grace under pressure. They are, in effect, a relentless drill sergeant for your emotional composure. Every interaction is a rep in the gym of your character. Similarly, imagine a significant project delay. A key deadline is pushed back, funding falls through, or a crucial team member leaves. The initial reaction might be panic, frustration, and a sense of failure. The Stoic, however, will look for the virtue embedded within the delay. This obstacle becomes a chance to practice perseverance, to dig deeper and find a new way forward. It might be an opportunity to practice creativity, forcing you to solve problems with fewer resources. It could even be a lesson in humility, reminding you that not all outcomes are within your command. The delay is not a stop sign, it is a detour that teaches you more about the landscape of your own capabilities. This practice is the opposite of passive acceptance. It is an active, engaged search for utility within adversity. It requires a mind that is constantly curious, asking, "How can I use this?" instead of a mind that is defeated, lamenting, "Why do I have to face this?" This is how you build a mind that is not just resistant to chaos, but one that actually welcomes it as fuel for growth. The immune system of your body doesn't just hide from pathogens, it encounters them, learns from them, and becomes stronger as a result. Your mental immune system operates on the same principle. By willingly engaging with obstacles and consciously extracting the virtue they offer, you are not avoiding difficulty. You are inoculating yourself against the fear of difficulty itself. You begin to see yourself as someone who thrives on challenge because each challenge leaves you wiser, stronger, and more resilient than you were before. The true power of this alchemy is that it makes you unstoppable. When you can reliably transform every setback into a step forward, no external event can truly halt your progress. Your progress is no longer defined by a smooth, uninterrupted path, but by your capacity to learn and adapt from every twist and turn. The person who masters this art is like water flowing down a mountain. It encounters rocks and logs, but it doesn't stop. It simply flows around them, sometimes wearing them down over time, always moving toward its destination. The obstacles become part of the water's journey, shaping its path but never its purpose. Your purpose is to live with virtue and reason. The obstacles are the very elements that give you the chance to fulfill that purpose. They are not in your way, they are the way. Now it's your turn to practice this transformative alchemy. I want you to bring to mind one current obstacle you are facing. It doesn't have to be monumental. It could be a recurring source of stress at work, a financial worry, a health concern, or a relational tension. Take a moment to clearly identify it. Now, with the intention of a Stoic alchemist, I challenge you to list 3 distinct ways this obstacle could be an opportunity to practice a specific virtue. For example, if your obstacle is a tight budget, it could be an opportunity to practice the virtue of frugality and resourcefulness. It could be a chance to practice gratitude for the essentials you do have. It could even be an invitation to practice courage in seeking new sources of income or re-evaluating your priorities. Write these 3 opportunities down. The act of writing forces the mental shift from passive endurance to active engagement. By consciously identifying the gold within the lead, you begin the process of transformation. You are no longer just facing a problem, you are accepting a challenge, and in that acceptance you have already begun to overcome it. The past is gone, the future is uncertain. Your fortress is now. This simple, profound truth is the ultimate anchor in any storm, the final piece of the puzzle in building a mind that remains unshaken by criticism, chaos, or control. While we have built shields and citadels, practiced reframing and acceptance, all of that strength must be applied somewhere, and that somewhere is always, inevitably, the present moment. The Stoics understood with crystalline clarity that our power does not exist in the relics of yesterday or the ghosts of tomorrow. It lives and breathes exclusively in the eternal now. When we allow our attention to be hijacked by regrets over past mistakes or anxieties about future scenarios, we are essentially abandoning our post. We are leaving the one place where we can actually exert influence, the present, to go and fight phantoms in lands we can never actually visit. This mental time travel is the primary source of our suffering, draining our energy and clouding our judgment when we need it most. The Roman philosopher Seneca put his finger on this exact human tendency when he observed that we are often tormented not by our present reality, but by our projections. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about the weight of that insight. How much of your mental fatigue comes from a difficult situation you are actually in, versus the countless terrible outcomes you are imagining might happen. The criticism you received last week that you still replay in your mind, that is happening now only as a memory, a story you are choosing to retell. The presentation you are terrified of giving next month, that is happening now only as a fearful fantasy. In both cases, the suffering is real, but its source is a phantom, a creation of your own mind wandering away from the solid ground of the present. The Stoic discipline is to continually reel your attention back from these imaginary battles. It is to recognize that the past is a set of facts you can learn from but not change, and the future is a set of possibilities you can prepare for but not command. The only territory you can ever truly occupy and manage is this single, fleeting moment. This becomes a supremely practical tool in the midst of a genuine crisis. Imagine a medical emergency where someone collapses in a public place. One person might freeze, their mind catapulted into a future of terrible outcomes. What if they die? What will their family say? The panic generated by these future projections paralyzes them, making them ineffective. Another person, perhaps trained in first aid, has their attention locked firmly in the present. They are not thinking about the ambulance that will arrive in 10 minutes or the potential long-term effects. Their entire world has narrowed to the next right action. Check for breathing, clear the airway, begin chest compressions. Their focus is on the precise pressure of their hands, the rhythm of the counts, the immediate feedback from the person's body. This intense, present-moment focus is not cold or unfeeling. It is the most effective and compassionate response possible. The chaos of the situation is managed not by trying to control the entire future, but by executing the next necessary step with perfect attention. This is the power of the present moment in action. It transforms overwhelming chaos into a sequence of manageable tasks. This principle applies to every form of chaos we face. A project at work is falling apart, deadlines are being missed, and tension is high. The anxious mind jumps to the future. My reputation is ruined, I'll be fired, my career is over. This catastrophic forecasting creates a feedback loop of stress that actually impairs your ability to solve the problems in front of you. The Stoic mind, anchored in the present, does something radically different. It acknowledges the seriousness of the situation without buying into the dramatic story. It then asks the only productive question: what is the very next thing I can do right now to improve this situation? Perhaps it is to draft a clear status email to the team. Maybe it is to review one specific section of the code that is failing. It could be as simple as taking 5 minutes to breathe and reorganize your priorities. By focusing on the next right action, you break the monolithic problem of failing project into a series of small, actionable steps. You are no longer trying to solve the entire future at once. You are simply building the future, one present moment action at a time. This approach is not only less stressful, but it is also exponentially more effective. To truly feel this anchor, you don't need to wait for a crisis. You can practice finding it in the calm of an ordinary moment, right now. So, if you're willing, let's try a brief exercise together to ground yourself in the reality of the present. You can keep your eyes open or close them, whatever feels more comfortable. First, just notice your breath. Don't try to change it. Just feel the sensation of the air moving in and out of your body. Notice the slight pause at the top of the inhale and the gentle release of the exhale. Now, bring your awareness to your physical body. Feel the weight of yourself in your chair, the contact of your feet on the floor. Notice any sensations, the temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of your clothing. Now turn your attention to your hearing. Listen to the sounds in the room around you, and then to the sounds farther away. Just receive them as pure sensation without labeling them as good or bad. For these few seconds, there is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to be doing. Your entire reality is contained in this single point in time. The past has dissolved, the future has not yet formed. This is your fortress. This is the still point from which all effective action springs. When you feel pulled into worry or regret, you can return to these simple anchors, the breath, the body, the immediate senses, to find your way back to the only time and place where you ever truly have any power, right here, right now. Apatheia isn't feeling nothing. It's not being enslaved by destructive feelings. This is one of the most misunderstood concepts in Stoicism, and it's absolutely vital to grasp if we want to build true mental immunity. The modern word apathy comes from this ancient Greek term, but they have almost opposite meanings. Where apathy suggests a cold, detached indifference to the world, the Stoic ideal of apatheia is about achieving a state of profound inner freedom. It is the liberation from what the Stoics called the passions, not our healthy desires or natural affections, but those turbulent, overwhelming emotions that hijack our reason and throw us into chaos. Think of it as the calm, clear sky after a violent storm has passed. The sky isn't empty, it's serene. It allows for clear vision. That is apatheia. It's the state of a mind that has mastered its internal weather, so that no matter how fierce the storm rages outside, the climate within remains temperate and clear. The Stoics had a very specific and clinical view of these destructive passions. They classified them as errors in judgment, diseases of the soul that arise from our mistaken beliefs about what is truly good and bad. When we judge an external event like harsh criticism or a financial loss as an ultimate evil, we set the stage for a passion to erupt. That initial, erroneous judgment fuels a kind of emotional fever that sweeps through us, distorting our perception and compelling us to act in ways we often later regret. Apatheia, then, is the state of having healed these diseases of the soul. It's the result of having corrected the underlying faulty judgments so that the fuel for the emotional fire is no longer there. You still feel, but you feel appropriately. You experience concern instead of paralyzing fear. You feel a healthy displeasure instead of corrosive anger. And you feel measured joy instead of manic euphoria that is destined to crash. This isn't a suppression of emotion, it's a transformation of it guided by wisdom. Consider the stark contrast between two different ways of handling a pointed, public criticism. Imagine someone who is ruled by their passions. They receive a harsh review of their work, and the passion of anger immediately ignites. Their face flushes, their heart hammers, and their thinking narrows to a single, burning point: retaliation. They might fire off a scathing email, lash out at colleagues, or spiral into a days-long funk, completely consumed by the perceived insult. Their judgment is clouded, their ability to see any truth in the feedback is zero, and their actions are likely to damage their relationships and their reputation. This is the very picture of being enslaved by a feeling. Now picture someone who has cultivated apatheia. They receive the exact same criticism. They feel the initial sting. The Stoics never claimed we become insensate robots. But that initial impression does not trigger a cascade of irrational judgment. Instead of being swept away by rage, they experience a calm, clear-headed assessment. They can separate the tone of the message from its content. They can ask themselves, is there any useful truth here, without their ego screaming in protest. Their response, if they choose to make one, will be measured, professional, and virtuous. They are free to choose their action because they are not a prisoner of their passion. This state of freedom is not something you are born with. It is the final product, the polished result of diligently applying all the other practices we've discussed. It is what happens when the dichotomy of control becomes second nature, so you no longer waste emotional energy on externals. It is the quiet strength of a well-fortified inner citadel that remains unshaken by outside noise. It is the fruit of premeditatio malorum, which has familiarized you with adversity and robbed it of its power to shock. Apatheia is the calm that comes from seeing things objectively, without the dramatic stories we layer on top. It is, in essence, the hallmark of a mind that has achieved full immunity, because the chaotic emotions that once caused so much internal turmoil simply no longer have a place to take root and grow. To begin moving toward this state in your own life, the first step is always mindful awareness. We must become detectives of our own inner world. So, I want you to take a quiet moment for honest reflection. Can you identify one specific passion, one of those irrational, overwhelming emotions that frequently disturbs your peace? It might be a flash of temper that arises in traffic, a gnawing anxiety about your financial future that keeps you up at night, or a consuming jealousy that poisons your enjoyment of a friend's success. Don't judge yourself for feeling it, simply observe it, give it a name, acknowledge the situations that tend to trigger it. This act of identification is the first and most crucial step in disarming its power. By bringing it into the light of your conscious awareness, you are no longer simply being controlled by it. You are beginning the process of understanding it, and in understanding it, you start to become free from it. This is how the cultivation of apatheia begins, not with a grand battle, but with a simple, courageous act of self-observation. Draw two circles. Your influence is the small, inner one. Focus your energy there. This simple, powerful visual from Stephen Covey's work is a modern-day map for a profoundly Stoic principle, a practical tool that takes the abstract idea of the dichotomy of control and turns it into a daily exercise for your mind. Imagine your concerns as a large, sprawling circle that contains everything you care about: global events, the economy, other people's opinions, the future of your career, the health of your loved ones. This circle of concern is vast, and if you try to tend to all of it at once, you will quickly feel overwhelmed, anxious, and powerless. Now, inside that large circle, draw a smaller one. This is your circle of influence. It contains only those things over which you have direct, meaningful control. Your own actions, your attitudes, your judgments, your efforts, your responses. The single most important decision you can make for your mental immunity is to consciously and consistently direct your attention and your energy inward into this smaller circle. The chaos of the outside world loses its power the moment you stop trying to manage the entire weather system and instead focus on building a sturdy, well-heated home. This practice is the direct, practical application of the wisdom we began with from Epictetus. The dichotomy of control gives us the philosophical foundation. The circle of influence gives us the day-to-day blueprint. When you find yourself worrying about something, the first question to ask is not "how can I fix this?" but "is this within my circle of influence?" This question acts as a filter, instantly separating productive action from futile worry. Worrying about a political election outcome, for instance, lies squarely in the circle of concern for most people. You can follow the news obsessively, argue online, and tie your emotional state to every poll, but none of that directly changes the result. Your energy is being sprayed outward like water from a hose with no nozzle, dissipating into the air. However, your circle of influence regarding that same election is smaller but far more potent. It contains your vote. It contains your ability to have respectful, fact-based conversations with people in your community. It contains the option to donate to a cause you believe in or to volunteer your time. These are tangible, meaningful actions. By focusing your energy here, you are acting virtuously on your concerns without handing over your peace of mind to an outcome you cannot command. You shift from being a passive, anxious spectator to an active, engaged participant, and in doing so, you reclaim a sense of agency. Let's map this out with a very common source of modern stress: your professional reputation. Your circle of concern might be filled with thoughts like, does my boss think I'm competent? What do my colleagues really say about me behind my back? Am I going to get that promotion? These are natural concerns, but notice how every single one depends on the internal judgments and actions of other people, realms you have zero direct control over. Trying to manage this circle is like trying to rearrange furniture in a house you don't own. It's exhausting and ultimately futile. Now, look at your circle of influence. What is truly within your command? You control the quality of your work. You control your punctuality and your preparedness for meetings. You control your willingness to help a teammate. You control your integrity in how you communicate. You control your commitment to learning and improving your skills. This is a much smaller, more manageable list, but every item on it is a lever you can actually pull. When you pour your energy into this inner circle, something remarkable happens. The outer circle often begins to shift as a natural consequence. By being a reliable, skilled, and virtuous team member, you are actively shaping others' perceptions, not by manipulating them, but by giving them consistent, positive evidence. Your influence expands organically from the inside out, not through force, but through the quiet power of focused action. The true magic of this tool is that it transforms anxiety into agency. Worry is the chaotic energy of a mind stuck in the circle of concern, spinning its wheels on ice. Action is the focused energy of a mind operating within its circle of influence, gaining traction and moving forward. Every time you feel that familiar sense of overwhelm, you can literally take out a piece of paper and draw the two circles. Write your specific worry in the large circle. Then, with rigorous honesty, ask yourself, what aspects of this situation can I actually influence? You will find that the inner circle, while smaller, is filled with powerful, actionable steps. Perhaps you're worried about a strained relationship. You cannot control the other person's feelings or actions that goes in the outer circle, but your circle of influence contains your ability to initiate a calm conversation, to listen without defensiveness, or to offer a sincere apology for your part. By focusing there, you are doing the only thing that has any real chance of healing the rift. You are tending your own garden, and in doing so, you make the entire landscape more beautiful. This is how you build a mind that is immune to the paralysis of chaos. The world will always present you with an endless list of things to be concerned about. The Stoic, armed with the clarity of the two circles, does not ignore those concerns. Instead, they greet them with a simple, empowering question. What is my next move? That move is always found within the inner circle. It is always an action rooted in your own virtue and agency. This practice ensures that your energy is invested, not wasted. It moves you from a state of reactive anxiety to a state of proactive calm. So, your task is to make this visual map a part of your mental toolkit. The next time a worry begins to hijack your attention, pause and draw those circles, even if it's just in your mind. Identify the dividing line between concern and influence. Then, deliberately and courageously, turn your back on the vast, noisy outer circle and pour every ounce of your effort into the small, quiet, powerful space that you truly command. That is where your power lives, and that is where your peace is found. A strong mind, like a strong body, requires daily inspection and care. We don't expect our physical health to thrive on neglect. We understand that muscles grow through consistent exercise and recovery. The same meticulous attention is needed for our mental and moral fitness. This is the profound purpose behind the Stoic practice of the evening review, a deliberate ritual of self-examination that Seneca himself diligently performed each night before sleep. He would retreat into the quiet of his own mind and, as he described in his essay on anger, ask himself a simple but piercing question: what bad habit have you cured today? What fault have you resisted? In what respect are you better? This wasn't an exercise in self-punishment or guilt. It was the essential maintenance required to keep the inner citadel strong, to identify where the walls had been breached by external chaos, and to plan the repairs for the coming day. This practice is the engine of gradual, lasting growth. Building a mind immune to criticism and chaos isn't about achieving a single, monumental breakthrough. It happens through the accumulation of tiny, daily adjustments, the consistent sanding away of our rough edges. The evening review creates a powerful feedback loop for your character. Without it, our days can blur into a series of reactions. We might lose our temper in a meeting, succumb to anxiety about a future event, or seek validation in the wrong places, and then simply move on, carrying those same unexamined patterns into tomorrow. The review forces a moment of pause, a sacred space where you step out of the stream of life and onto the riverbank to observe the currents. It's here that you transform lived experience into practical wisdom, ensuring that today's mistakes become tomorrow's lessons, and today's small victories become the foundation of lasting virtue. Let's make this beautifully practical with a simple 3-question framework you can begin using tonight. The first question is, what did I do well? This is not about inflating your ego, but about recognizing and reinforcing virtuous action. Did you manage to pause for 3 seconds before sending that angry email? Did you choose to see a frustrating delay as an opportunity to practice patience rather than as a personal insult? Did you act with integrity in a situation where no one was watching? By consciously acknowledging these moments, you are sending a clear signal to your subconscious about what you value. You are strengthening the neural pathways associated with calm judgment and virtuous choice, making it more likely that you will access that version of yourself the next time you are tested. This question ensures that your self-examination is a balanced practice, building you up even as it identifies areas for improvement. The second question is perhaps the most crucial for building immunity. Where did I let externals disturb my peace? This is the diagnostic tool for your inner citadel. Scan back through your day. Was there a specific moment when you felt your calm shatter? Perhaps it was a critical comment from a colleague that sent you spiraling into self-doubt for an hour. Maybe it was the anxiety that gripped you when you saw a troubling news headline, or it could be the frustration you felt when a family member didn't act according to your expectations. The key here is to identify not just the event, but the specific judgment you made about it. You're not asking, why did that person criticize me, but why did I grant that person's words the power to dictate my emotional state? This question directly applies the dichotomy of control, training you to spot the exact moment you handed the keys to your happiness over to an external event you could not command. The third and final question turns reflection into proactive strategy. How can I improve tomorrow? This is where you move from observation to action. Based on the insights from the first 2 questions, you set a gentle but clear intention for the day ahead. If you noticed that you were easily disturbed by noise and interruptions, your intention for tomorrow might be to practice the view from above during your busiest hour, reminding yourself of the cosmic smallness of the momentary chaos. If you identified a tendency to seek external validation, your intention could be to perform one small act purely for its own virtue, with no expectation of praise or recognition. This isn't about crafting a rigid to-do list for your soul, but about planting a seed of awareness. You are giving your mind a specific, positive focus, a virtue to practice, which is far more effective than simply vowing not to get angry. The true power of this practice is revealed not in a single session, but in its consistency. The changes are subtle at first. You might notice that you catch yourself a half-second sooner before a reactive thought takes hold. You might find that a comment that would have ruined your morning now barely registers. Over time, this daily audit reshapes your relationship with your own mind. You become less of a passenger being tossed by every wave of emotion and more of the captain, calmly reading the charts and adjusting the course. It cultivates a profound and gentle self-awareness that is the very opposite of self-absorption. It is the foundation of self-mastery. You begin to know your triggers, your strengths, and your growth edges with the clarity of a skilled craftsman who knows their tools intimately. So, the invitation is to treat this not as another item on your endless to-do list, but as a gift you give yourself at the end of each day. For the next 3 nights, I encourage you to set aside just 5 minutes before you sleep. Find a quiet space, perhaps with a notebook, and walk through these 3 questions. Don't judge yourself harshly for your answers. Approach the process with the curiosity of a scientist studying a fascinating subject, which in this case is your own evolving character. After just 3 nights, pause and take note. Has your perspective shifted in any small way? Do you feel a slightly greater sense of agency over your inner world? This simple practice is the thread that weaves all the other Stoic principles into the fabric of your daily life, transforming philosophy from a theory you admire into a resilience you live. When faced with criticism, ask not why are they attacking me, but what pain or ignorance drives them. This subtle shift in questioning is a profound application of Stoic reason, a lens that allows you to see the actions of others not as targeted assaults on your character, but as symptoms of their own internal world. It is the practice of using your own rational faculty to understand the irrationality in others, and in doing so, you build a layer of immunity that is both compassionate and incredibly strong. The sting of criticism comes from the story we tell ourselves, that we are being judged by an all-knowing, objective authority. But when you pause and consider that the person delivering the critique is themselves a complex, flawed human being, acting from a place of their own limited knowledge, their own unhealed wounds, or their own fears, the criticism is demoted from a divine verdict to a human opinion, and often a messy one at that. You are no longer on trial before a perfect judge. You are simply witnessing the outward expression of someone else's inner turmoil. Marcus Aurelius, who had to deal with scheming senators, treacherous generals, and endless political maneuvering, constantly reminded himself of this truth to maintain his equanimity. In his meditations, he writes, "When people injure you, ask yourself what good or harm they thought would come of it. If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than outrage or anger." He is urging himself to look past the injurious act itself and to see the faulty reasoning behind it. The person who betrays you likely believes it is for their own gain or protection. The one who hurls an insult is often trying to alleviate their own sense of inadequacy. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about understanding its source so that it loses its power to poison your own mind. By feeling sympathy, not pity, but a recognition of shared human fallibility, you replace the corrosive heat of anger with the calming chill of understanding. You see the critic as someone who is, in their own way, lost in the same chaotic world as you are, simply navigating it with a poorer map. Consider the modern phenomenon of online trolling. You pour your heart into a piece of content, sharing a vulnerable idea or a creative project, and the response is a vicious, anonymous comment designed only to wound. The unexamined reaction is to take it personally, to feel a surge of anger and humiliation, but apply the Stoic lens. That troll is not an omnipotent critic. They are almost certainly a person sitting alone behind a screen, likely feeling powerless, angry, or deeply unhappy in their own life. Their act of cruelty is a misguided attempt to feel a sense of power or to project their own pain outward. Seeing this doesn't make the comment pleasant, but it completely changes its meaning. It transforms from a valid assessment of your worth into a sad indicator of the commenter's inner state. The arrow was never really aimed at you. You were just a convenient target for a poison that was already coursing through their veins. This understanding allows you to dismiss the comment with a sigh rather than a scream, conserving your emotional energy for the constructive engagement that truly matters. This principle applies with equal force to the difficult people we encounter in our daily lives. Like a perpetually demanding boss, you might have a manager who micromanages your every move, criticizes relentlessly, and never seems satisfied. It is easy to internalize this as evidence of your own incompetence or to build up a reservoir of seething resentment. But what if you viewed their behavior through the lens of their own pain or ignorance? Perhaps this person is operating under immense pressure from their own superiors, and their micromanagement is a manifestation of their own anxiety about failing. Maybe they lack the emotional intelligence to lead effectively, and their criticism is a clumsy, unskilled attempt to get results. Their behavior is not a reflection of your value. It is a reflection of their own limitations, their own fears, their own unmet needs. This perspective doesn't mean you accept poor treatment, but it allows you to address the situation strategically rather than emotionally. You can respond to their demands with calm professionalism, setting clear boundaries while understanding that the intensity of their behavior is about their internal world, not your external performance. This practice of seeking the root cause in the other person is an act of immense personal empowerment. It moves you from a position of reaction, where you are at the mercy of every external stimulus, to a position of thoughtful observation. You become like a doctor diagnosing an illness. You observe the symptoms, the harsh words, the chaotic actions, but you are curious about the underlying disease. This curiosity is the antidote to resentment. It is difficult to stay angry at someone when you are genuinely trying to understand the brokenness that drives them. It allows you to maintain your center because you are no longer taking the bait. You see the critic's words not as truth to be absorbed, but as data points about their character and current state of mind. This data can then be used wisely. Perhaps it reveals a genuine blind spot you can work on, or perhaps it simply reveals that this person's opinion is not one to be highly valued. In either case, you are the one making the choice, guided by your own reason, not by their dysfunction. To truly integrate this shift into your own life, I want you to try a simple but powerful exercise in compassionate reasoning. Bring to mind a recent critic, someone whose words or actions bothered you. It could be someone you know personally or a stranger online. Now, set aside your own feelings about the incident for a moment. Your task is to actively construct a compassionate backstory for this person. Why might they have acted that way? What pain could they be carrying? A recent loss, a deep-seated insecurity, a history of being treated poorly themselves. What ignorance might they be operating under? A lack of understanding about your situation, a narrow worldview, a mistaken belief. Don't do this to excuse their behavior, but to understand it. Imagine them as a child before life layered on its defenses and wounds. This is not about them. It is about you reclaiming your peace by reframing the narrative. By consciously practicing this empathy, you are not condoning bad behavior. You are fortifying your own mind against its disruptive effects. You are choosing to see the universality of human reason and its frequent absence, recognizing that we are all, in our own ways, struggling to figure it out. Life is short. This isn't a cause for panic, but for purpose. We've touched upon the remembrance of death as a tool for gaining perspective, but now we arrive at its most vital and active application, using the undeniable finitude of our time not as a reason to freeze in fear, but as the ultimate fuel for decisive, meaningful action. When you truly internalize that your days are numbered, a profound recalibration occurs. The energy you once wasted on trivial anxieties and reactive anger is suddenly revealed for what it is, a precious, non-renewable resource being poured down the drain. The Stoic practice of Memento Mori, in this light, becomes the great clarifier. It forces a ruthless prioritization, cutting through the noise of daily distractions and asking one piercing question: is this how I want to spend a portion of my irreplaceable life? Seneca, in his brilliant essay on the shortness of life, draws a crucial distinction that resonates as powerfully today as it did 2,000 years ago. He argues that life is not short, we simply make it so. The problem, he writes, is not that we have a brief time to live, but that we waste much of it. We are not living truly, but merely being busy. We fill our days with frantic activity, chasing promotions, curating online personas, and accumulating possessions, all while postponing the things that genuinely nourish the soul. We act as if we have an endless supply of tomorrows, and in doing so, we fritter away our todays. Seneca observes that we are often occupied with the affairs of life without ever truly engaging with life itself. This is the subtle trap, mistaking a crowded schedule for a full life. The shortness of life, when properly understood, shatters this illusion. It reveals that being busy is not the same as living fully, and that a life spent reacting to every criticism and chasing every external validation is a life lived on someone else's terms, not your own. Consider the stark contrast between two individuals and how they choose to spend a single evening. The first person comes home from work, feeling drained and slightly irritated by a critical comment from a colleague. They open their laptop and fall into the digital rabbit hole. They find the comment thread related to the criticism and spend the next 2 hours crafting defensive replies, reading opposing viewpoints, and getting into heated arguments with strangers online. Their heart rate is elevated, their mood is sour, and when they finally closes the laptop, they feel exhausted and empty. They have spent a significant chunk of their finite existence, 2 hours they will never get back, on a conflict that will be utterly forgotten by everyone involved, including themselves, within a week. Now picture the second person. They receive the same piece of criticism. They feel the same initial sting, but they have Memento Mori as a conscious filter. They pause and ask themselves a version of Seneca's question: is this how I want to invest my life's energy? The answer is a clear no. Instead, they close the laptop. They use those same 2 hours to call an aging relative they've been meaning to connect with, sharing a long, laughter-filled conversation. Or they open a book they've been curious about, losing themselves in learning a new skill. They might even go for a walk in the fresh air, simply being present with the sensation of being alive. At the end of those 2 hours, this person feels enriched, connected, and at peace. They have deposited their time into an account that yields real returns in wisdom, relationships, and personal well-being. Both individuals had the same amount of time, but one invested it in the currency of chaos, while the other invested it in the currency of a life well lived. This perspective transforms Memento Mori from a somber meditation into a powerful call to arms. It is the ultimate antidote to procrastination in matters of character and contribution. Why would you wait until next month to mend a strained relationship when you have no guarantee of next month? Why would you postpone starting that project that aligns with your deepest values for a better time that may never arrive? The remembrance of death injects a healthy urgency into our pursuit of virtue. It doesn't mean we rush through life frantically. It means we move through it with intention, ensuring that our actions are aligned with our principles today, not at some vague point in the future. It's the understanding that the most profound legacy we can leave is not a list of accomplishments, but the quality of our moments and the positive impact we have on the people around us while we are here. To make this shift from anxiety to action tangible in your own life, I want to invite you to conduct a gentle but honest audit. Cast your mind back over the last 7 days. Without judgment, simply review how you spent your time and, more importantly, your mental energy. How many hours were devoted to worrying about what others think of you? How much space was taken up by ruminating on past slights or anxiously forecasting future problems? How much of your activity was merely reactive, responding to emails, scrolling through feeds, engaging in conversations that left you feeling drained? Now contrast that with the time you spent on activities that you know in your heart truly matter, the moments of genuine connection with loved ones. The time invested in a skill that brings you joy or serves others. The periods of quiet reflection where you simply appreciated being alive. The actions you took purely because they were right, not because they were easy or praised. This isn't about creating a ledger of guilt, but about gaining clarity. The disparity between these two lists is the measure of the gap between being busy and living purposefully. Seeing this gap clearly is the first and most crucial step toward closing it, toward ensuring that your short, precious life is defined not by the chaos you endured, but by the meaning you actively created. The secret to being in control is to want exactly what the universe provides. This sounds like a paradox, a recipe for passivity, but in the Stoic framework, it is the ultimate expression of power. It is the final, most sophisticated discipline in reorienting your entire psychological compass away from the turbulent seas of external fortune and toward the solid ground of your own inner virtue. We've talked about managing impressions and accepting obstacles, but the discipline of desire goes to the very root of our suffering, the endless, restless wanting for things we do not have, and the frantic aversion to things we wish to avoid. Epictetus, who built his entire philosophy on this foundation, taught that the chief task in life is to identify and manage our desires and aversions correctly. He said that the essence of philosophy is to understand that our happiness depends on us wanting things to happen as they do happen. When your desires are perfectly aligned with reality, you can never be disappointed. You are, in a very real sense, invincible. This discipline requires a radical honesty about what is truly within our sphere of command. We often desire outcomes, a specific job title, a certain amount of wealth, the approval of a particular person. These are all externals hanging in the uncertain realm of fortune. To tie your happiness to their attainment is to build your house on a foundation that can be washed away by the slightest change in the tide. Epictetus would ask us to shift the focus of our desire inward to the one thing that is unassailably ours, our capacity to choose virtuously in any given circumstance. Do you desire a promotion that is not entirely up to you, but do you desire to work with integrity, to be diligent, to collaborate generously with your colleagues? That is always, in every moment, within your power. By desiring the virtuous action itself, you guarantee your own satisfaction. The promotion may or may not come, but your success is already secured in the quality of your effort. The desire is fulfilled not by a future event, but by your present moment choice. Let's illuminate this with a clear contrast. Imagine two employees working toward a promotion. The first employee's desire is fixed entirely on the outcome, the new title, the higher salary, the corner office. Every action is calculated toward this end. They might work hard, but their motivation is tainted by anxiety. They are overly concerned with appearances, with political maneuvering, with comparing their progress to others. When setbacks occur, they become despondent and bitter, seeing them as personal failures. Their peace of mind is held hostage by a decision committee, a budget allocation, factors entirely outside their control. Their life is a roller coaster of hope and fear. Now consider the second employee who practices the discipline of desire. They, too, would like the promotion. It is a preferred indifferent, something that would be nice to have, but their primary desire is different. Their deepest want is to perform their duties with excellence, wisdom, and justice. They desire to be a person of character, regardless of the outcome. This internal focus brings a profound sense of calm. They work hard because it is virtuous to do so, not as a means to an end. They receive feedback with equanimity, seeing it as grist for the mill of their own improvement. If the promotion comes, it is welcomed. If it does not, they are not shattered because their core desire to have acted well was fulfilled every single day. Their satisfaction is self-generated and therefore cannot be taken away. This reorientation is the master key to contentment. The chaos of unfulfilled desire is a self-inflicted wound. We constantly look to the horizon for the next thing that will finally make us happy, failing to see that the very act of wanting creates a state of unhappiness in the present. The Stoic practice is to cultivate a deep appreciation for what is already present, for the vast abundance that the universe provides in this very moment. This isn't about complacency or rejecting ambition. It is about channeling your ambition toward the only thing that truly matters, the development of your own character. Wanting what you have means wanting the opportunity, right now, to practice patience, courage, and wisdom with the materials currently at hand. Your challenging job is not an obstacle to your peace. It is the very gymnasium where your peace is built. The difficult person in your life is not a nuisance to be avoided. They are the perfect sparring partner for your patience. When you want the situation exactly as it is for the training it provides, you transform your entire experience of reality. To begin this profound inner shift, I want you to engage in a simple but powerful exercise of self-awareness. Take a moment to reflect and identify your top 3 desires right now. Be brutally honest with yourself. They might be desires for external things, a romantic relationship, a financial goal, a specific professional achievement. Or they might be desires to avoid things, the fear of illness, the aversion to conflict, the dread of loneliness. Write these 3 desires down. Now, next to each one, draw 2 columns. Label the first column within my complete control, and the second outside my complete control. Now, with the clarity we've been practicing, categorize the elements of each desire. For the desire for a promotion, the outcome is outside your control. But your preparation, your effort, your attitude, these go in the first column. For the desire to avoid illness, the functioning of your body is largely outside your control, but your healthy habits and your response to symptoms belong to you. This exercise does not tell you to abandon your goals. It illuminates the precise point where your power begins and ends. It shows you exactly where to place your desire for it to be effective and peace-giving. The goal is to gradually, consciously, transfer the energy of your wanting from the second column to the first. Stop wanting the promotion. Start wanting the excellence that might lead to it. In doing so, you claim the only kind of control that can ever bring you lasting tranquility. Stoicism isn't about going it alone. The Stoics had teachers and peers. There's a common and understandable misconception that building an inner citadel means retreating into a fortress of solitude, becoming a lone island of rationality in a chaotic world. But this image of the isolated sage is a distortion of history. Stoicism, from its very beginnings, was a philosophy practiced in community. Zeno, the founder, taught his students in the painted porch, the Stoa Poikile, in ancient Athens. This was a public space, a hub of discussion and debate. Epictetus ran his own school where students would gather not just to hear lectures but to engage in dialogue, to challenge each other, and to practice their reasoning together. Even the Roman Stoics, like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, who are often operating in positions of immense power and potential isolation, maintained a vital sense of fellowship through the written word. Seneca's profound letters to his friend Lucilius are a beautiful testament to this. He wasn't writing abstract treatises for a faceless audience. He was guiding a specific person through real-life struggles, offering advice, encouragement, and tough love. This was a long-distance community of two, a shared journey toward wisdom. This communal aspect is not a nice-to-have accessory to Stoic practice. It is a critical component for building a resilient mind. When we try to apply these principles entirely in the privacy of our own thoughts, our perspective can become narrow. We can easily fall into blind spots, mistaking our own stubbornness for principled resolve or our own fears for rational caution. Sharing our challenges with others who are on a similar path provides an invaluable reality check. Imagine you are struggling with a piece of harsh criticism at work. You've applied the dichotomy of control. You've tried to see it objectively, but the sting persists. Discussing this with a trusted friend who understands Stoicism allows you to verbalize your reasoning. In the act of explaining it, you might hear where your logic is shaky. They can ask the gentle but probing question you haven't asked yourself. Is that truly outside your control, or is there a part of your reaction you're still holding onto? This external mirror helps you see your own mind more clearly, strengthening your practice in a way that solitary reflection alone cannot achieve. In our modern world, this fellowship is more accessible than ever, even if it looks different from the Stoa. Online communities dedicated to Stoicism have become the new painted porch. Forums and social media groups bring together thousands of people from all walks of life, all sharing their daily attempts to live with greater virtue and resilience. In these spaces, you can post a specific problem you're facing, a difficult family situation, an ethical dilemma at work, a personal failure, and receive a dozen different perspectives grounded in Stoic principle. You see that you are not the only one grappling with these ancient challenges in a modern context. This shared struggle is incredibly validating. It normalizes the difficulty of the path and provides a powerful antidote to the feeling of being personally targeted by chaos. When you read about someone else successfully applying amor fati to a cancelled vacation or turning an obstacle upside down after a financial loss, it doesn't just inspire you, it gives you a practical blueprint. It makes the philosophy feel alive and applicable, transforming it from a set of abstract ideas into a lived collective experience. Beyond the digital realm, forming or joining a local Stoic reading group can be transformative. Gathering with a small group of people regularly to discuss a text like Meditations or the Enchiridion creates a container for deep growth. The act of reading a passage and then hearing how 5 different people interpret and apply it to their own lives exponentially expands your understanding. A concept that seemed vague in isolation suddenly becomes vivid through the lens of another person's story. This group provides something crucial: accountability. It's one thing to privately decide you're going to practice voluntary discomfort. It's another to tell a group that you're going to take cold showers for a week and then report back on your experience. That gentle social commitment can be the nudge you need to follow through on your intentions, turning them from passing thoughts into ingrained habits. The community becomes your training partners, cheering your progress and offering a supportive hand when you stumble, reminding you that the goal is progress, not perfection. So, as you continue to build your mind's immunity, I encourage you to consciously seek out this fellowship. The journey is too rich and the path can be too challenging to walk entirely by yourself. Your task is to find one resource this week that connects you with others exploring these ideas. It doesn't have to be a major commitment. Perhaps it's simply sending a passage from this video to a friend and asking for their thoughts. Maybe it's joining an online forum and introducing yourself, even if you just lurk and read for a while. It could be searching for a local philosophy meetup or starting a virtual coffee chat with one other person to discuss a Stoic concept each week. The form doesn't matter as much as the intention. By opening your practice to the perspective and support of others, you are not weakening your self-reliance, you are fortifying it. You are building a network of external pillars that will help support the unshakable pillar you are cultivating within, ensuring that your inner citadel is not a lonely fortress, but a welcoming home connected to a whole city of fellow travelers. If you lost your job, your status, and your possessions, who would you be? This is not a hypothetical question designed to induce anxiety, but a profound inquiry into the very foundation of your sense of self. Most of us construct our identities like a resume, listing our job titles, our relationships, our material acquisitions, and the accolades we've received from the world. We point to these external markers and say, "This is who I am." But the Stoics challenge us to see the inherent fragility in this approach. What happens to your identity when the market shifts and the title is gone? What becomes of your self-worth when a relationship ends or public opinion turns against you? A mind that is truly immune to chaos and criticism cannot be built on such shifting sand. The final layer of resilience, therefore, involves cultivating a fluid identity, one that is rooted not in the temporary trappings of fortune, but in the enduring qualities of your character. This is the practice of defining yourself by what you are, not by what you have. Epictetus offered a beautifully simple analogy to guide this mindset. He said that life is like a banquet. Various dishes are brought to you. Some you may enjoy, like a prestigious job or a comfortable home, while others may be less appealing. The wise approach, he taught, is to take what is offered with gratitude, to enjoy it while it is before you, but to never cling to any of it. If the plate of wealth is taken away, you do not scream and protest as if a part of you has been severed. You understand that it was never truly yours to keep. It was merely on loan from the universe for a time. Your identity is not the food on the plate. Your identity is the guest at the banquet, the conscious, reasoning being who can choose to enjoy the feast with grace and equanimity, regardless of which specific dishes come and go. This detachment from externals is not a cold indifference. It is the ultimate form of psychological freedom. It means that your core self remains intact and unshaken, no matter how the menu of your life changes. Consider the powerful example of someone facing financial ruin. For a person whose identity is fused with their wealth, bankruptcy is not just a financial event, it is an existential catastrophe. It feels like the erasure of their very self. The loss of the house, the car, the social standing is experienced as a profound humiliation, a personal failure that can lead to despair, because who are they without these things? They have no answer. Now, picture another individual who has practiced this stoic fluidity of identity. They too experience the stress and practical difficulty of bankruptcy. The situation is objectively challenging, but because their self-worth was never primarily anchored to their net worth, the blow to their core being is minimal. They are able to separate the event from their essence. They can say to themselves, "I have lost my money, but I have not lost my integrity. I have lost my possessions, but I have not lost my capacity for courage, for patience, for starting again." This person handles the situation with a grace that seems superhuman to others. but it simply stems from a clear understanding that their true identity is built on virtues that no bank can repossess and no market crash can devalue. This principle extends to every label we accept from the world. Think about the identity of being a successful artist or a respected leader. If you internalize these as permanent definitions of who you are, you become a hostage to the conditions that created them. The artist who ties their self-worth to critical acclaim will be shattered by a negative review. The leader who believes they are their authority will be lost and adrift upon retirement. A fluid identity allows you to play these roles fully and passionately while you have them, but to release them lightly when the time comes, because you know that the role was never the whole of you. You are the actor, not the part. The stage may change, the script may be rewritten, but the actor's skill, their presence, their essence, these remain. This is how you become impervious to the chaos of loss and the sting of criticism directed at your temporary roles. The critic is not attacking you, they are merely commenting on a performance, on an external outcome. Your identity, your worth, is safe backstage in the quiet dressing room of your character. To make this abstract concept a tangible part of your own life, I want to challenge you with a revealing exercise. Take a piece of paper and a pen, find a quiet moment, and at the top of the page write the question, what 5 things most define who I am? Now answer it honestly. Don't overthink it. Write down the first 5 identifiers that come to your mind. It is very likely that your list will include external markers, your profession, your role as a parent or partner, your hobbies, perhaps your political or religious affiliations. There is nothing wrong with these. They are important parts of our lives. But now, I want you to look at each item and perform a simple test. Ask yourself, could this be taken away from me by forces outside my complete control? A job can be lost. A relationship can change. A physical ability that enables a hobby can fade. These are, in the Stoic sense, the dishes at the banquet. Now, on the right side of the page, I want you to try to rewrite your list. Challenge yourself to define who you are using only internal qualities, attributes of your character that are yours to keep, no matter what life brings. Are you curious? Are you resilient? Are you compassionate? Are you just? Are you a person who seeks wisdom? This second list may be harder to write, but it is the list that describes the guest at the banquet, not the food on the table. This is the foundation of your unshakable self. The goal is not to eliminate the first list, but to ensure that the second list is the primary source of your self-esteem. When your identity is anchored there, you can navigate any storm because you carry your anchor within you. Immunity isn't the absence of fear, it's the courage to act rightly despite it. Up to this point, we've built formidable defenses for our mind's shields of discernment, fortresses of perspective, and the quiet strength of acceptance. But a fortress, no matter how strong, is ultimately a reactive structure. True resilience requires more than just weathering the storm. It demands the valor to step outside the gates and meet the challenge head-on when virtue calls. This is where the active, dynamic virtue of Stoic courage takes center stage. In the Stoic framework, courage was not merely one virtue among many. It was one of the 4 cardinal virtues alongside wisdom, justice, and temperance, considered essential for a life well lived. But it's crucial to understand the Stoic definition, which is far more nuanced than the popular image of fearlessness or reckless bravado. Stoic courage is the disciplined ability to endure fear and discomfort wisely. It is the judgment to correctly identify what is truly worth facing, and the will to do so not in the absence of fear, but in direct opposition to its paralyzing grip. This is the virtue that transforms a resilient mind into an active force for good in the world. A courageous act from a Stoic perspective is never undertaken for glory or adrenaline. Its sole justification is that it is the right thing to do. It is the application of wisdom to the realm of action. Imagine a soldier who charges into battle purely for the thrill of combat. That is not courage, but a form of recklessness driven by a different passion. Now picture a soldier who feels the same visceral fear, whose every instinct screams for self-preservation, but who moves forward because they are protecting their comrades or holding a strategic position that is essential for the greater good. That is Stoic courage. The fear is real and acknowledged, but it is not the commander of the action. The commander is a rational commitment to a virtuous duty. This distinction is everything. It means that courage is not the domain of a special few born without fear. It is a capacity available to every single one of us whenever we choose to let our principles guide our feet, even when they feel like lead. We can find powerful, modern embodiments of this principle in the figures of whistleblowers. Consider an individual working within a large corporation or government agency who uncovers evidence of serious wrongdoing, fraud, safety violations, or corruption. Speaking up carries immense personal risk, the almost certain loss of their career, potential legal battles, social ostracism from colleagues, and terrifying financial insecurity. The fear they feel is not a sign of weakness, it is a rational response to a genuine threat. The path of least resistance, the comfortable option, is to stay silent, to look the other way, and to protect their own livelihood. But the stoically courageous individual performs a rapid, internal calculation. They apply the dichotomy of control. They cannot control the retaliatory actions of the powerful, but they can control their own commitment to truth and justice. They recognize that staying silent would be a betrayal of their own integrity, a vice of cowardice that would corrode their soul far more than any external punishment. Their courage lies in enduring the fear of ruin because the alternative, a life of complicity and self-betrayal, is judged to be a far greater evil. Their action is not an impulsive outburst, but a measured, difficult choice for what is right. This virtue extends far beyond these dramatic public examples and into the very fabric of our daily lives. Courage is just as present in the quiet moments as it is in the grand gestures. It is the courage required to have a difficult conversation with a loved one that you have been avoiding, knowing that it will bring temporary discomfort but is necessary for the health of the relationship. It is the courage to admit you were wrong in a meeting, to say, "I made a mistake," and to face the potential blow to your ego. It is the courage to set a firm boundary with someone who consistently oversteps, even if it might lead to conflict. It is the courage to start a new venture or learn a new skill when the voice of self-doubt is loudest. In each case, the Stoic approach is the same. Acknowledge the fear, the discomfort, the social risk. See it clearly and objectively, and then ask the guiding question: what does virtue require of me here? If the answer is that courage is needed to act with integrity, then the presence of fear becomes irrelevant to the decision. The action is taken not because it is easy, but because it is right. This is the active component that completes our mental immune system. A mind that only knows how to accept criticism calmly is strong, but a mind that can also voice necessary criticism when it is unpopular is formidable. A spirit that can endure chaos with equanimity is resilient, but a spirit that can step into chaos to help restore order is heroic. Stoic courage is what bridges the gap between inner peace and outer action. It ensures that our hard-won tranquility does not devolve into passive detachment, but rather fuels a purposeful and virtuous engagement with the world. It is the muscle that allows us to use our resilience not just for our own benefit, but as a source of strength for others. By practicing courage, we affirm that our inner citadel is not a place to hide from the world, but a secure base from which to operate effectively within it. To make this virtue a living part of your own practice, I want you to bring this concept down from the abstract and into the immediate future. Look ahead at your coming week. Scan the horizon of your personal and professional life. Can you identify one specific situation where you know, in your heart, that exercising stoic courage will be required? It might be something small but significant. Perhaps it is the need to finally speak up in a team meeting about an ethical concern you have with a project. Maybe it is the courage needed to apologize for a past oversight you have been rationalizing away. It could be the decision to delete a distracting social media app for a month to reclaim your focus, despite the fear of missing out. Whatever it is, name it to yourself now. By identifying it in advance, you are not waiting for the moment to surprise you. You are preparing for it. You are giving your future self a clear mission: to feel the fear, to acknowledge the discomfort, and then to act in accordance with what is right. This is how courage is built, not in a single legendary act, but in the accumulation of 1,000 small, conscious choices to let virtue lead the way. To fortify your mind against chaos, you must sometimes give it silence. In a world that screams for our attention every waking moment, from the relentless ping of notifications to the endless scroll of digital feeds, the most radical and restorative act of self-defense can be to consciously step away from the noise. This is not about isolation or withdrawal from life, but about creating a necessary space for your inner voice to be heard. It is in these quiet intervals that the Stoic principles we've been discussing can move from abstract ideas you've heard about to lived truth you feel in your bones. The Roman Stoics, despite their often very public lives, deeply understood this need for retreat. Marcus Aurelius, amidst the roar of the battlefield and the intrigue of the imperial court, wrote his most profound insights in the quiet of his tent, in a private journal meant for his eyes only. This was his sanctuary, a space where he could commune with his own reason, separate from the demands and opinions of the empire. Seneca, too, wrote extensively about the value of withdrawing into oneself, of mixing busy days with periods of quiet reflection to achieve a balanced life. This practice of silence and solitude serves a crucial purpose. It starves the beast of external validation. When you are constantly connected, your sense of self can become parasitically attached to the reactions of others. The likes, the shares, the comments, the approval of your peers. Your inner dialogue gets drowned out by a chorus of external voices, leaving you vulnerable, your mood swinging on the pendulum of public opinion. But when you deliberately enter a space of silence, you are forced to confront the only voice that truly matters, your own. You are reacquainting yourself with your core values, your deepest judgments, and your innate capacity for reason. This is where you do the essential work of integrating Stoic philosophy. It's one thing to intellectually agree that you should focus on what you can control. It's another to sit in stillness and consciously release your grip on all the things you cannot. That mental release becomes a tangible, practiced skill in the quiet. Think of your mind as a glass of muddy water. The constant stimulation of modern life is like shaking that glass relentlessly. The water becomes a turbulent, opaque cloud, and you can see nothing clearly. The practice of silence is the act of setting the glass down on a stable surface. At first, the sediment may still swirl, but if you are patient and simply let it be, the particles gradually settle. The agitation ceases and the water becomes transparent, allowing you to see all the way to the bottom with perfect clarity. In the same way, when you grant your mind a period of silence, the swirling chaos of anxieties, reactions, and to-do lists begins to settle. The agitation subsides, and what remains is a clear, calm reflection of your true priorities and your rational self. From this place of clarity, your responses to the world's chaos will be measured and wise rather than reactive and clouded. A practical way to begin is to institute a daily quiet hour. This doesn't have to be an hour of meditation in a dark room, though it could be. It could be as simple as the first 60 minutes of your day, where you make a pact with yourself to avoid all media, no news, no email, no social media. Use that time to drink your coffee in silence, looking out the window, or go for a walk in a nearby park, leaving your phone in your pocket. The goal is not to achieve a blank mind, but to engage in an inner dialogue. As you walk, you might consciously practice the view from above, contemplating the vastness of the sky and the age of the trees to gain perspective on your worries. You might revisit a recent criticism and apply the discipline of objective judgment, stripping away the story to see the bare facts. You could ask yourself the sage question, what would a perfectly wise person be focusing on right now? This quiet time is the workshop where you actively forge your resilience, away from the din of the world's forge. Another powerful method is to find moments of micro-solitude within a busy day. The space between meetings, the few minutes waiting in line for coffee, the commute home, these are typically filled with pulling out a phone to fill the void. The Stoic challenge is to resist that impulse. Instead, just stand there, feel your feet on the ground, notice your breath, let your thoughts come and go without latching onto them. This is a miniature retreat, a fleeting return to your inner citadel that recalibrates your nervous system and reminds you that you are not obligated to be constantly stimulated. It is in these small pockets of silence that you reaffirm your sovereignty over your own attention, wresting it back from the algorithms designed to capture it. Each time you choose a moment of silence over a hit of digital dopamine, you are strengthening your mental immunity, building a tolerance for the discomfort of being alone with your thoughts until it becomes a source of strength rather than anxiety. So, the challenge for you is to reclaim a fragment of your day from the noise. I want you to consciously schedule just 15 minutes of pure silence into your tomorrow. It doesn't have to be a major production. You can do it first thing in the morning, during your lunch break, or right before you go to sleep. The only rule is that for those 15 minutes, you will be alone with your thoughts. No podcasts, no music, no screens, no reading. You can sit quietly, you can go for a walk, or you can simply stare out a window. Your mind will likely rebel at first, itching for distraction, rehashing old conversations or inventing new worries. That's okay. Your job is not to stop the thoughts, but to be the calm observer of them. See if you can notice the space between your thoughts, the simple awareness that exists before the next story begins. In that space, you will find a silence that is not empty but full of a quiet power. It is the sound of your own mind, unplugged from the grid, running on its own innate energy. This is where you will discover that the peace you have been seeking externally has been waiting for you internally all along, and it only asks for a little quiet to make itself known. Building an immune mind is like building a muscle. It requires consistent, patient practice over time. You wouldn't expect to walk into a gym for a single session and walk out with the physique of an athlete. The transformation is gradual, the result of showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it, and especially when you can't immediately see the difference. The same unwavering commitment is the bedrock of Stoic resilience. This philosophy offers us not a magic pill for permanent tranquility, but a set of tools for a lifelong project of self-construction. Understanding this from the outset is perhaps the most important step in preventing discouragement. There will be days when a piece of criticism lands and you feel that familiar, hot flush of anger before you can even remember the dichotomy of control. There will be moments of chaos where your first instinct is to panic, not to seek the perspective of the view from above. This is not failure, this is the nature of practice. Progress is not a straight line ascending steadily upward. It is a spiral where you may revisit the same challenges again and again, but each time with slightly more awareness, a little more strength, and a fraction of a second more pause before the old habit takes over. The measure of your growth is not in achieving a state of flawless perfection, but in the gradual narrowing of the gap between the stimulus and your virtuous response. The Roman philosopher Seneca captured this essential truth with a brilliantly practical analogy. He said that you cannot learn to swim during a shipwreck. When the waves are crashing over the deck and the ship is splintering, it is far too late to begin practicing your strokes. The time for training is during the calm seas, in the safety of the swimming pond. This is the profound purpose behind all the exercises we've discussed: the evening review, the voluntary discomfort, the 3-second pause. They are not meant to be deployed only when crisis strikes. They are our daily laps in the pool. They are the repetitive drills we engage in during times of peace, so that when the inevitable storms of life arrive, the professional setback, the personal loss, the wave of unfair criticism, our response is not a frantic, untrained flail, but a calm, practiced stroke that carries us to safety. Your practice of mentally rehearsing adversity through premeditatio malorum on an ordinary Tuesday is what prepares you for the real adversity on a difficult Friday. The muscle memory of your mind is built in the quiet moments, so it is available to you in the loud ones. Think of it in terms of learning a new language. On your first day, you might master a handful of simple phrases. You feel a sense of accomplishment, but you are nowhere near fluent. If you were to travel to the country where that language is spoken, you would still struggle immensely, likely misunderstanding much of what is said and fumbling to express your most basic needs. But if you practice consistently for just 20 minutes each day, something remarkable happens over months and years. The vocabulary that once felt foreign becomes second nature. The grammar rules that required conscious thought begin to feel intuitive. You don't become fluent overnight. You become fluent through the accumulation of thousands of small, consistent efforts. Stoicism is the language of resilience. At first, the concepts amor fati, the reserve clause, the inner citadel, might feel like unfamiliar words. Applying them in the heat of the moment feels as awkward as trying to remember the correct verb conjugation while ordering a coffee in a busy cafe. But with daily practice, this new language of the mind starts to become your native tongue. Your internal monologue begins to automatically question impressions, to seek the virtue in an obstacle, to focus on the circle of influence. What was once a conscious effort becomes an unconscious competence. This long-view perspective is the ultimate antidote to the quick-fix culture that surrounds us, a culture that promises instant enlightenment in 10 easy steps. That kind of thinking sets us up for disappointment and abandonment of the practice at the first sign of difficulty. The Stoic path asks for a different kind of commitment, one of patience and gentle perseverance. It encourages you to celebrate the minor victories, the time you took a deep breath instead of sending an angry email, the moment you reframed a delay as an opportunity for patience, the evening you conducted your review and acknowledged a small step forward. These are the rep counts in your mental workout. They may seem insignificant on their own, but compounded over a year, over a decade, over a lifetime, they forge a resilience that is unbreakable because it has been tempered slowly, like fine steel, through continuous, patient effort. The goal is not to never feel anger or anxiety again. It is to observe those feelings, understand their source, and choose not to be ruled by them. And that choice gets easier and more automatic with every single day you choose to practice. So, as we near the culmination of this journey, the most practical step you can take is to embrace this patient, long-term view. To that end, I want to invite you into a simple, powerful commitment. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the many principles we've explored and trying to implement them all at once, I want you to choose just one single practice to focus on with gentle consistency for the next 30 days. It could be the evening review where you spend 5 minutes each night reflecting on your day. It might be the 3-second pause where you consciously create a space between an impression and your reaction. Perhaps it's the practice of applying the reserve clause to your goals, or spending 1 minute each morning visualizing your inner citadel. The specific choice matters less than the commitment to consistency. For the next month, make this one practice your personal project. Don't worry about getting it perfect, just focus on showing up for it. Notice what happens when you miss a day and simply return to it the next without self-judgment. This focused, patient application is how a philosophy becomes a lived reality. It is how you move from learning about the tools to actually building with them, one day, one brick, one patient moment at a time. And so we arrive at the heart of the matter, the single thread that weaves through every shield, every discipline, every practice we've explored. True and lasting immunity does not come from rearranging the world to your liking. It cannot be found in the perfect job, the absence of criticism, or a life free from chaos. That pursuit is a mirage, an exhausting chase after a horizon that forever recedes. The fortress, we have learned, is not built from the stones of favorable circumstances. It is constructed from the unshakable material of your own internal virtue. Your character, your judgments, your reasoned responses, this is the only territory you truly command, and it is, remarkably, the only territory you will ever need. When your sense of worth and your source of peace are rooted here, in this inner citadel, the storms of external events may rage, but they cannot topple the structure. You become like a deep-rooted tree in a hurricane. The winds may strip away leaves, but the core remains standing, ready to grow anew. We began our journey by drawing that most essential of lines, the dichotomy of control, which immediately returns to you the energy once wasted on the uncontrollable. We then learn to guard the gates of our mind, to pause and question the initial impressions that so often lead us astray. We explored the profound alchemy of amor fati, of not just accepting but embracing our fate, transforming every obstacle into the very path forward. And we dedicated ourselves to the daily disciplines, the evening reviews, and the moments of silence that are the ongoing maintenance of a resilient mind. These are not separate tricks, but interconnected parts of a single, coherent system for living. They are the tools for a lifetime of building, for the continuous project of becoming the calm, clear-eyed architect of your own experience, no matter what blueprints the world tries to hand you. The journey from a state of reactive fragility to one of proactive resilience is perfectly captured in the timeless words of Epictetus, who said, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." Let that sink in. Freedom is not the absence of external constraints. It is the supreme mastery of your own inner world. It is the freedom that comes when criticism is met with calm analysis, when chaos is met with focused action, and when the desire to control is replaced by the power to choose your response. This is the ultimate immunity, a liberation so complete that it allows you to engage with the world fully, passionately, and compassionately, without ever being its prisoner. This power is not reserved for philosophers on a pedestal. It is accessible to you right now in the life you are already living. You do not need to wait for a quieter time or a different set of circumstances to begin. Your training ground is this day, this moment, with its current challenges and irritations. The most powerful step is often the simplest. Tonight, before you sleep, I invite you to try the Stoic evening review. Ask yourself those 3 gentle questions. What did I do well? Where did I let an external disturb my peace? How can I improve tomorrow? Or tomorrow, make a pact with yourself to practice the 3-second pause. Before you react to a strong emotion, just create a sliver of space for your reason to enter. These small, consistent actions are the seeds from which an unshakable mind grows. This is not a journey you have to make alone. In the comments below, I would be deeply grateful to hear from you. Share a small victory, a moment where you applied one of these principles, or a challenge you're currently facing. Let's build a community of practice right here, supporting each other with insights and encouragement. If this path toward a more resilient life resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel. This is just the beginning. We have many more explorations ahead into the practical wisdom of Stoicism and other philosophies that can help us live with greater strength, clarity, and purpose. Thank you for investing this time in building your inner citadel. The work is profound, and the freedom it brings is the greatest